baby, don't treat me like a machine. I could still be just what you need. No, baby, don't treat me like a machine. Wanna go to your apartment, take it back to where we started. We'll be everything you wanted, you wanted, you wanted. And I know it could be perfect, and I know it would be worth it. We'll be everything you wanted. You want it, you want it. You want it, you want it. It's driving us apart. The way we never speak. I'll fix your broken heart and make you feel complete. We used to be so young and free. Yeah, baby, don't treat me like a machine. I could still be just what you need. No, baby, don't treat me like a machine. We used to be so young and free. Yeah, baby, don't treat me like a machine. I could still be just what you need. No, baby, don't treat me like a machine. Wanna go to your apartment, take it back to where we started. We'll be everything you wanted, you wanted, you wanted. And I know it could be perfect, and I know it would be worth it. We'll be everything you wanted, you wanted, you wanted. On it, on it, on it, you wanted, on it, on it, on you wanted, on it, on it, on you wanted. You want it, you want it. You want it, you want it. You want it, you want it. They don't know how we do it. They'll never get it anyway. Conquering the impossible, all with a smile on our face. We work hard, we play harder, we push it to the limit, going farther and farther. We work hard, we play harder, we push it to the limit, going farther and farther. Grind all day, we dance all night. With pride it brings the nature
me. Red in this light that isn't mine. Finding every reason you can find to question my love. Remember that it's not me. I was never the one who broke your heart. We both know I've been gentle from the start. So though the questions keep on coming this time, you know that I'll listen. You know I'll be patient with you. You're my baby. Maybe this time you'll know you can trust me. You'll know I'll be faithful to you. You're my baby. I was never cheating. You connected dots that weren't there. You gave attention to the thoughts I never wear. It's not my style, even though it's so clear to me. You shouldn't base the future on the past. I know you really want this thing to last. So though the questions keep on coming this time, you know that I'll listen. You know I'll be patient with you. You're my baby. Maybe this time you'll know you can trust me. You'll know I'll be faithful to you. You're my baby. I don't wanna fight now. You're barking, you bite now, to prove that I'm right now, that you lost your sight now. I'm holding it tight now. Can't see through the night. How to show you my light now, to paint these walls white now. I don't wanna fight now. You're barking, you bite now, to prove that I'm right now, that you've lost your sight now. I'm holding it tight now. Can't see through the night. How to show you my light now, to paint these walls white now. So though the questions keep on coming this time, you know that I'll listen. You know I'll be patient with you. You're my baby. Maybe this time you'll know you can trust me. You'll know I'll be faithful. So though the questions keep on coming this time, you know that I'll listen. You know I'll be patient with you. You're my baby. Maybe this time you'll know you can trust me. You'll know I'll be faithful to you. You're my baby. To you, you're my baby. To you, you're my baby. To you, you're my baby. I don't wanna fight now.
Clockwork Soldier.
Generation Orange in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Welcome to Generation Orange. Yeah.
It's that time of the week again, everybody.
It feels like these weeks are getting shorter. The more Dynamo activities and RGV activities there are every week. It feels like I literally was just at a Dynamo game, and I have another one tomorrow.
Well, I mean, then it doesn't help that it's midday week.
Oh, midweek, yeah. Well, it's not the midweek match that's a problem. It's the midweek match followed by a weekend match, followed by a midweek match, followed by a weekend match, followed by a midweek match. That's excruciatingly just repetitive. Anyways, you're listening to Generation Orange, a Houston Dynamo, Houston Dash, and RGV Toros podcast, and also videocast. You can watch us live on YouTube every Tuesday night at 7 p.m. Central on the Down in the Valley YouTube channel. I am your host, Sean Ringrose, and my co-host is...
Edson Ochoa.
What's up, Edson?
What's up?
Yeah, we bring you as all the soccer news fit for Houston consumption. That's the best way I can put that. And also discussion fit for Houston consumption, which means pretty much everything, because we are Houston, and Houston is diverse and everything. So this week we have... I originally did not intend this to become a long show, and I will tell you right now that based on how this played out on Twitter this morning, dictated how this show is going to go. Suffice it to say that the day started with me expecting a 2-hour show and quickly snowballed after 10 a.m. this morning into oh, hey, I guess we got to go 3 hours. And a comment was made on the Dynamo Discord, and I'm looking at you, Gabe, that 3 hours is 3 points, and therefore we must go 3 hours tonight in order to beat Philly tomorrow. And I will take 3 points. If we win tomorrow, then, maybe this has to become a permanent thing. I don't know. We'll talk about it. No, I'm just kidding. I couldn't do this every week. Although this is the second in three shows?
Yeah.
It's been crazy. And also, the midweek matches followed by the weekend matches just means that there's been a lot of, like I said, Dynamo activity. Dash have been busy as well. RGV's been busy as well. And so you add all that up, and it's a 3-hour show, and we have a very live show for you tonight. Our hope is with the show that we've got lined up for you guys, that you guys are going to be engaged this week. We are looking for phone calls this week. We have topics that you have expressly said on Twitter through various engagement means and things like that, hey, we want to talk about this. And so we've said all along, this show is your show. This show is made so that you guys have a voice and you guys have a chance to get your voice out there and to allow you to have a platform to talk and to be able to share your opinion. And so we are opening up the phone lines this week completely 100% for all 3 hours. Again, that is 3 hours, people. And so please call in. The number to call in is
1-956-622-5977.
And I will note for anyone who's curious or concerned, we have tested the phone lines today. They are operational, so you have no excuse not to call in this week. And I can say we are expecting at least one call-in guest, potentially more. I did try to reach out to a couple other people. We will see how that goes. So first things first, there's one topic I want to get to that is not Dynamo related, but when I saw this come up in Dynamo Discord, my immediate first thought was I have to make sure we bring this up on the show. So today it came out in the on DirtySouthSoccer.com, which is Atlanta's SB Nation site, that Barco, who did not play and didn't even make the 18 in their last match, is also being benched for this upcoming match on Saturday. Now, this is big news. Barco is a $13 million transfer, one of their biggest name players just because of the transfer. Young kid, 19-year-old kid, high expectations for him. And it came out today, the reason for this decision, it was a coach's decision. And it came out today that Barco made some romantic gestures to a teammate's girlfriend.
That's putting it lightly.
Yes, I have heard worse, but I'm not going to share that because there's no need to go that deep into detail. But let's just say that it was not. If it had been my girlfriend, I probably would no longer be with the team because I would probably. Well, let's just say I'd either castrate the kid or I would have, I would have at least made him feel it.
You would have pulled an Ivan Megales?
I would have made sure he felt it, that's for sure. And to be fair, he deserved it. That's a jerk-ass move, to say the least. And that's not even what we're going to talk about today. I just felt leading the show with that just felt appropriate this week.
So basically, Argentina has their own version of John Terry.
I mean, let me just say this. There's a reason they call it the Dirty South, and he definitely fits in the Dirty South. With that being said, let's move on from that crap. Unless you want to talk about it a little further. I mean, I have no problem with that.
Not really. I mean, it's not our team, and it's something that...
like I said, and it's also important to note that it's been released that nobody knows how long he's going to be benched. It's up to Tata or the club. Neither have officially stated how long he'll be out. But we do know he's at least out through the rest of this weekend, which includes their Montreal Impact match. On Saturday, which is interesting because, this is a time that Atlanta really does need to not be dropping points. With that said, let's continue to the next segment. So Saturday was fun, to say the least. If you did not get to make it out, I feel very sorry for you. It was entertaining on both ends of the pitch. It was controversial to some extent. It was very hot, very humid. That's an understatement. And it was, like I said, it was fun. The atmosphere was electric throughout the entire match. And this is going to lead into some other things we're going to discuss as well. But first things first, let me do this. Edson, let me get your opinion on, well, first of all, the derby ended in a draw for anybody that didn't get to watch it. Frisco scored in like the first 2 minutes. Mm-hmm. The Dynamo went and scored within the next 10.
I think it was in the 8th minute.
Yeah, it was within the first. Sorry, it was within the first 10, and then nothing. There were chances throughout, but nobody actually scored. The Dynamo technically scored, but it was called back on an offsides. We'll get to that in a minute. But first, tell me what went wrong in this match for you.
I think in my opinion that the Dynamo was kind of being a little bit too defensive from what I was kind of seeing about it. I think they were being too conservative in regards to, especially in the second half. Mm-hmm. Even when bringing Memo Rodriguez, he was helping out more in defense than out in the attack. Mm-hmm. And so you were giving Frisco more of the initiative to attack, and I feel that, and we mentioned many times during this show that I believe that the Dynamo defend themselves better attacking, especially mm-hmm. with the kind of players that we have.
Best defense is a very good offense.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so I think we got lucky a couple of times that Frisco did not get another goal.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, that PK could have easily gone in.
And I believe there was another one that hit
hit the crossbar.
Hit the crossbar.
Lamar, yeah. With the goal literally open in front of him, standing just beyond the penalty marker.
Oh, you mean like last night in Rocket League?
Yes. Yeah. We won't talk about that right now. But yeah, Lamar literally in the 18, closer to the penalty spot than not, with the ball literally just right in front of him, rolling. I mean, just literally dribbling up to him. I mean, it's as beautiful as a setup as you'll ever see. And he shot, and he put everything behind it, and it just clanged off the crossbar. And I was like, thank God, because if that had not clanged off the crossbar, it was probably going in, or it was going into the stands. I mean, there was no. Like, it was going to... Yeah, there was no in between. It was either going in the stands or it was going in, and then it hit the crossbar, and I went, okay, I guess not. So.
I guess it was in between. Yeah. So, the point is that I feel that they were being too respectful of Frisco.
See, I don't know if it's that so much as you know what you have ahead of you, which is another 2 matches within the next 7 days. You know that you're going to be playing 2 of those matches in extremely outrageous heat and humidity. You know that your players are tired already from this combination of road trip and homestand.
Thank you, MLS.
You know that your players are already feeling it. You know that your starting center back has now picked up a knock. Senderos was out with a knock that he picked up in the Open Cup match. You know that you're putting an emphasis on Open Cup and FC Dallas. So we say they sat back, but here's the thing. This was 1 out of 3 matches against Dallas this season. It was the first at home. We have another one at home, which puts us at the advantage. A draw in this match, in my opinion, is perfectly acceptable. This is during the hardest part of our schedule, just in terms of the number of matches and the number of days. So with all of that taken into account, you have to be okay with the draw in this case because the odds were stacked horribly against you. And not only that, you have to consider Frisco is the #1 team in the West. They're there for a reason. They are a very good team. I don't think it was so much Wilmer playing to the respect card as it was Wilmer going, my team is freaking exhausted. My team needs a break. I'm going to let them sit back a little bit and absorb pressure because they just don't have the legs to keep going forward. Credit to them. They went forward frequently. They pushed the pressure frequently when they could. But you could tell very quickly those legs got tired by maybe the 60th minute or so. There were a couple of opportunities where Kyoto had the ball, or at least had the ball, got high up the pitch on a counterattack very fast, and just had no help coming behind them because everybody was so tired from running back and forth. This is where having a backup box-to-box center mid pays dividends. This is where being able to have players that can come in on rest pays dividends. Right now we just didn't have it because we have so many guys injured. Along that front, before we go any further with the Derby discussion, it's important to note that, and I think it might have been you that tweeted it out, or perhaps someone else from down in the RGV, that Wenger was at RGV?
Yes, he was.
So fill me in on what you know about that, and if it's just Wenger's at RGV, that's good. Okay, that's fine.
So he played for 45 minutes
in their match
against World Park Rangers. And while he was on the pitch, the attack, that transition between attack and defense looked really good. That's when
was he playing midfielder? No, he was playing right back.
He was playing right back, okay. Which makes matters better.
Yeah.
For the Dynamo.
I have this question: was Bryce Marion playing right winger?
No.
Dang, I wanted to see them cross over. Oh, that's sad. I wanted to see those two cross over. All right.
We'll get more into detail.
Absolutely, yeah,
Express.
Absolutely.
But
there is no Express this week, by the way. You have 45 minutes to an hour, so you better be prepared.
Well, it's still Express. Actually, yeah. So, because tomorrow we're gonna have Greg Luca. That's gonna be
not tomorrow. Thursday.
Thursday, yes. Thursday, Greg Luca will be on. But anyways, so Andrew Wenger played 45 minutes as a right back.
And this is
he looked good out there actually,
and that's not surprising to me at all.
Because he had Carlton Belmar in front of him, so that's a guy that's not easy to mark.
Yeah.
And so not only did he help defend, he also helped out in the attack. Once they subbed him off for Kai Green,
you saw the difference.
Our attack died.
You know, it's interesting to me, and we're gonna actually, you know what? I'm gonna save that. I'm gonna tease it, but I'm gonna save it. It's interesting to me that. I'm going to say it, and then we'll just have to remember that. Well, okay, I'll write it down so I don't forget. It's interesting to me that for all the gripe from the RGV supporters, that the Dynamo just sent one of their better players, a guy who regularly found himself in the starting 18 or starting 11, and was almost always part of the 18, even when he wasn't starting. And that's on a team where his preferred position is winger. And yet he found himself playing outside back and played it well enough. And then they sent, and he started how many matches at that position until he got hurt again? And then they felt fit that he needed to be sent down to RGV. So it's good to see. We'll dive into that during the RGV segment.
Yeah, I was surprised because it was him and Eric Bird that started against Swope Park Rangers. And they did good. They were able to hold. And like I said, Andrew Wenger helping out.
So before I don't want to dive too deep into that. So that's good. That's the reason we bring that up is because I really feel like having Machado at right back left us extremely vulnerable to the counterattack. And so I can't wait enough, or I can't hype enough and explain how excited I am enough to have Wenger or AJ back. I don't care which at this point. I want one of them back as soon as possible.
Yes.
Because Machado at outside back is not my friend at all. And he didn't play bad by any stretch of the imagination, but you could tell that that guy is not built to be an outside back consistently over 90 minutes, repeatedly over multiple matches. And not in this heat and humidity. Though, then again, I don't think any outside back is really equipped to handle this heat and humidity for more than 90 minutes. With that, so next I want what went wrong for me. So what went wrong for me, I think you kind of hit the nail on the head. There wasn't enough pressure going forward, but like I said, I also understand why. I would have liked to have seen more pressure early on and consistently, at least up until the 30th, 35th minute. I felt like they dropped back by about the 15th after they got that goal and they tied it back up. I would have also have liked to see a bit more of Memo. I would have wanted Memo to come in a little earlier. I felt like the game was screaming for Memo to come in for that electricity. And they were planning to bring him in about a minute and a half, 2 minutes earlier, but that was before whoever, I think it wasn't Watts. Whoever, if Fuenmayor went down with that, he got hit in the back or something, he went down for about a minute. Mm-hmm. That was right before that. They were planning to bring him in right before that happened. And then they sent him back over to warm up a little bit more before they actually did bring him back in. I think because they were concerned that if Fuenmayor goes down, we got to bring in Kevin Garcia, who was their only other defender on the bench, and move Machado centrally, so Kevin Garcia would have played outside back most likely, which would have left us even worse in the vulnerability department. So, yeah, the look on your face says it all. So then also I want to know, so that's what went wrong for me. Also, I think what went wrong for me was I would have rather seen, if Lundqvist was match fit, I would have rather seen Lundqvist out there for this match. I think this match, Lundqvist versus Barrios, would have been a fun matchup to watch. And I think Lundqvist's speed and his ability to get into the attack would have made Kyoto, would have allowed Kyoto to go a little more central at times, which would have freed up Morrow even more, and would have also freed up Elise on the other side a little bit more. Mm-hmm. With that said, what worked for you? What did we do well that worked?
The fact, I think, more than anything, like the mentality of not losing your cool, the fact that you let a goal in against you very early in the game. Mm-hmm. Pretty much right.
And we usually don't do that. There's very few times up until this point in the season that we've let in a goal in the first 5 minutes of the match.
Yeah, because you're talking about you had one against Sporting Kansas City.
Yes.
And then now against FC Dallas.
Yeah.
So when I saw that over there in Austin, I was like, oh man, there's a lot of time, but like that's the thing that worries me is like, why are they not starting focused?
Yeah,
the defense not starting focused.
Yeah.
But I think majorly it's just that what I liked is they did not let themselves be messed up by that.
They kept their mental toughness, or
they woke up.
I wouldn't say that. Well, yeah, okay, they woke up. I'll give you that. But they didn't back off any more than they already were. You know, they didn't go, oh crap, we've given up the goal, the game's lost, now we just got to go into a defensive shell and deal with it. Mm-hmm. They continued to press, and you could tell they had belief in themselves that they were going to score again, and sure enough, they did. I think that's a fair call out, actually. I do, that their mental toughness was strong enough to overcome conceding such an early goal in such a pivotal match. What went wrong for me, and this is going to be discussed later, is the roof over the Dallas visiting fans. That to me was probably one of the worst parts of this match. We'll dive into that in our second hour a little bit more. The other thing that went wrong for us was Senderos having a knock. I feel like if he had been out there, that goal is not surrendered in the first 2 minutes. He's much better marking than Watts is. And he's better at communicating with Fuenmayor.
Yes.
And so I just think that we wouldn't have given up that goal, which might have changed that game pretty dramatically, to say the least, because once we got our goal, then Dallas wouldn't have been sitting back. They would have been pressing a lot harder, which would have been interesting to see. Okay, and then, we've already discussed about Senderos being out with that knock. Let's discuss a little bit of the U.S. Open Cup, just a little bit, not much. It's important for the U.S. Open Cup that we keep in mind The reason why the Dynamo are trying to put an emphasis on this right now is because they're 2 matches away from, well, actually they're 1 match away from the final, and if they win, they get an automatic CCL berth. They get a berth in the CONCACAF Champions League automatically for next season. Why that's important also is because the winner of Open Cup gets $300,000. That's a player. That's actually 2, possibly 3 players with the way that Matt Jordan seems to be able to pinch pennies, incredibly so. So there was an emphasis placed on Open Cup, and I think those were the primary reasons that the emphasis was placed on the Open Cup. But at the same time, I think Open Cup also pretty much dictated how we played this match. I hate that the quarterfinal round comes right before rivalry week. It sets up teams that are still in the Open Cup to have to pick one or the other almost all the time. We got lucky in that we have enough depth to be able to handle it. But if you look at how we had to play the Open Cup, we had to, even Sporting Kansas City, right? They put everything into Open Cup and we still beat them. With that said, LAFC is going to do the same thing in just a few weeks. And so, and that's going to make, that match being on August 8th is going to make for an even tougher August, which is already a tough August because there's a couple of 3-match spans again of 3 matches in 7 days, which I loathe with every fiber of my being, especially this time of the season. Like, give it to us up front where we're still fresh and we still have players that are, And
the temperature's not as hot.
And fans aren't baking in the sun, instead of at the middle point of the season when it's the absolute hottest it can be. And I'm sure Dallas did not enjoy playing in that heat either, even though it's just as bad up there. But regardless, I look at Open Cup, and if I have to decide, if I'm the Dynamo, or even if I'm not the Dynamo, if I'm a fan, if I have to decide, do I want the Dynamo to put emphasis on Open Cup, or do I want the Dynamo to put emphasis on MLS play? At this point in the season, I want Open Cup. And it's not just because of the CCL berth. It's not just because of that money. It's because you only have 2 matches you have to win from this point to get that Open Cup. MLS season, you can afford to drop 2 matches. I know people hate hearing that, but you can afford to drop 2 matches in MLS play as long as you pick them up towards the end of the season by winning a couple matches that you're not quote-unquote supposed to win. Mm-hmm. The team this season has proved they are capable of winning on the road. So all we have to do is win 2 additional matches on the road, continue our winning performances and strong performances at home. We're going to be fine. And with the possibility of getting Open Cup and still making MLS playoffs. That, to me, is an acceptable season in a nutshell.
So, Cisco is asking, don't teams who qualify for CCL can get additional allocation dollars?
They do. So, it's not, CCL grants you, I think, $100,000 if you make CCL, because actually it might be even more than that now, but because MLS wants you to have a slightly deeper roster, so they basically grant you an extra roster slot by giving you allocation money to afford an extra player. But if you win Open Cup and you get a CCL berth, winning Open Cup is $300,000. You get another $100,000 to $150,000 from MLS for making CCL, and then on top of that, MLS will usually provide you some other sort of concession later on. Can't really go into details because I don't know what they are, but usually some sort of concession. So it's valuable. It is very valuable in the MLS landscape to win Open Cup, so long as you can do it while maintaining a good performance in the league. There are a lot of teams who do so crappy in MLS play that instead they just go full force into US Open Cup. This season Philly's not exactly out there dominating teams, but they're in the semifinal too. In years past, Chicago was the wooden spoon winner, which meant they were the worst team in MLS, and they won Open Cup. They didn't win it, but they got to the final. Mm-hmm. So, it's DCU, worst team in MLS a few years ago, and they won it. So it's one of those things that it just seems like the teams that are struggling in MLS, they tend to put emphasis on US Open Cup because it's the cheapest, easiest way for them to actually get a Champions League berth. With that said, we're going to go ahead and go to break. When we come back from break, we're going to continue a little bit more Open Cup talk. We're also going to talk about CONCACAF Champions League. And then we're going to talk about the fund that U.S. Soccer left for all of us ahead of the draw, and then also discuss what the heck happened with the whole Portland LAFC thing. We'll talk about that when we get back. Thanks for tuning in. You should be like Cisco. You need to call him, bro. So you should be like Cisco. Call in, dude. Call in. Can you? Never mind. You're good.
What's your name?
No, you're good.
Take you
a nice little awkward transition there. That's okay. Welcome back. We're talking Houston Dynamo right now. We're going to continue talking Houston Dynamo / U.S. soccer. So for anybody who was living under a rock, following the Dynamo victory over Minnesota, Sporting Kansas City midweek on Wednesday, LAFC and Portland played, and LAFC beat Portland by, I don't know, it was like a 1-2-1 scoreline or something like that. No, it was more than that. That was a crazy match. It was like 3-2.
No, the Sporting KC?
No.
Oh, 3-2.
Yeah, 3-2.
Yes,
yeah.
3-2.
And so LAFC eked out that win, and it came out the next morning. Actually, like later that night. No, it was the next morning because I fell asleep before then. It came out that LAFC may have potentially fielded some illegal players, and what I mean by that is U.S. Open Cup has specific roster rules that do not mirror exactly the MLS roster rules, and what I mean by that is U.S. Soccer or U.S. Open Cup states that you can only field 5 international players on your 18-man roster. And by internationals, those are dictated as non-U.S. players or players without green cards. And LAFC fielded a player who is a Canadian player, and by MLS rules, Canadian players are considered domestic players, but by U.S. Open Cup, they are not. They are considered international. So as a result, Portland filed a protest, and the draw, which was supposed to happen like a day later, ended up being delayed almost 3 days. No, more than that, almost a week. Almost a week, because we had the draw on, 5 days. We had the draw on Monday. Ended up being postponed for 3, 4, 5 days. And basically Portland withdrew their protest because U.S. Open Cup, U.S. Soccer, and LAFC had discussed this player prior to the match, and LAFC had been given approval, according to U.S. Soccer and U.S. Open Cup officials, to go ahead and field the player, that they would deal with it when the time came. And so LAFC took that to mean, oh, he's allowed to play, and he's allowed to be in the 18. We won't count him as international for this tournament. Well, what that does is that basically means that, lo and behold, to all of us that are noobs, that LAFC was granted special permission to play a player that they should not have played according to the standard U.S. Open Cup rules. That also means that now teams could potentially say and push the issue, we have Canadian players, we want them to play. They should be counted as domestic players for this tournament. Anyway, so long story short, like I said, Portland withdrew their protest, meaning LAFC advanced. The draw was held on Monday, yesterday, and lo and behold, the Dynamo were drawn to host LAFC. Woohoo! Host an assignment semifinal. So be sure to show up for that match. That is on August 8th at 7:30 p.m. Central Time. If you don't have your tickets, aren't a season ticket holder, they go on sale, I believe, publicly tomorrow or Thursday, one of the two. If you are a season ticket holder, call your season ticket rep ASAP so that you can secure your seats for the Open Cup. And trust me, you want to be there. This is a semifinal. This is a very, very big match in our season. Go Dynamo. And so, anyway, so the final draw also happens, which the final draw is to see who out of those 4 teams would host and in what order priority would be given. And the Dynamo have second priority, and first priority was drawn to Chicago. What that means is if Philly, who is hosting Chicago, beats Chicago, then Philly, as long as we win, will travel here for the final. The Dynamo could host a U.S. Open Cup final. This is an extremely fun proposition. I want to host a U.S. Open Cup final, and I want to win a U.S. Open Cup final. And at home, you don't beat us at home. So I want to win a U.S. Open Cup final in BBVA with all of our fans in attendance, because being a U.S. Open Cup final, that at least we can fill the lower bowl. I don't know if we could fill the upper bowl on a U.S. Open Cup final, but we could damn sure fill that bottom bowl, which would be good. I'd be okay with that. Attendance was not bad. Attendance was decent. I mean, it wasn't great, but it was decent. And it was better than previous rounds of U.S. Open Cup. So that gives me hope that maybe part of the problem is that we've just never really advanced all that far in Open Cup, and fans don't really know what to expect when it comes to Open Cup because we haven't advanced that far in Open Cup, and midweek matches suck. And then, LAFC is an interesting one. However, they have a bunch of players that, well, not a bunch. They have a few players that will be ineligible to be on their 18. The Dynamo have one that if they're going to have to figure out how they're going to play it, because you have Machado, you have Senderos, you have Fuenmayor. Those three are internationals. You have Lundqvist, he's an international. You have Tomas Martinez, he's an international. Elise and Kyoto is not. Elise is, and Morrow is not. Mm-hmm. So you have 6 internationals with 5 international slots. For anybody curious, that is why Lundqvist was not in the 18 for the Open Cup match. Just so everybody's aware. Even though Senderos didn't travel. No, he traveled for the Open Cup match. Because it was here. Yes. He was here. But and
that's where he got knocked.
Yeah, that's why. Yes, correct. Thank you. But that is why Lundqvist did not make the 18 for that match. So on that same note, I suspect when we get to August 8th, they'll make a decision as to who they're gonna have in the 18. It would not surprise me if one of the 3 center backs did not make it and Lundqvist did on the 18 or in the 11 for that matter. Mm-hmm. I don't know which center back at this point you would not have on that roster. You do have Watts who can play backup as needed, and so I could see a situation where maybe Machado gets a rest, or maybe Senderos. Well, actually, it probably wouldn't be Senderos. It could be Senderos. It could be Fuenmayor gets a rest. Could be Machado gets a rest. It's just tough to say at this point. It could be that Tomas gets a rest, although that would shock me to no end because he's really the only player we have at that position with that level of talent, mm-hmm. And that level of capability. And it also, in case anybody was curious, the day of the draw, the actual new day of the draw, which was yesterday at 1 p.m. Central Time, when the stream started at 1 p.m. No, it didn't. The stream started at 1:15 p.m. It took them that long to get the stream started. And then they had a few other minor issues where people weren't able to tune in for whatever reason on the YouTube channel or the YouTube video that they had, or stream that they had set up. But instead you could tune in on Facebook Live. And it just makes me laugh because it kind of summarizes my feelings on U.S. soccer in general. Their inability to perform the functions at which they're supposed to perform, and their lack of capability to perform them in a way that exemplifies being, a prestigious organization, prestigious federation. The fact that you couldn't figure out how to start your stream on time is pretty freaking sad. With all that said, let me get your thoughts on Open Cup and your thoughts on LAFC coming up on August 8th, which again, that's 2 weeks away, but that's still 2 weeks away.
Yeah. So basically, I should not have had a stringer.
No, I was like, what are you doing?
Okay, so I was there at the match. This time I didn't go as press. I went as a fan, and I was pretty caught off guard that as soon as I got into the stadium, and all of a sudden, like I look at the TV there by the concessions, and I just see the SKC players celebrating. I'm like, oh no! It's like, did we just trade late minute goals for early minute goals, kind of like that? So I was kind of worried about that, if the way SKC plays.
Yeah. And
the fact that they got a goal really early, I thought, is this going to be a precedent for the rest of this match? But then, I noticed that after that, it was mostly Dynamo attacking.
Our attack settled into the match very quickly. And credit to Kyoto, he figured it out real quick. And it was a world of difference for this match.
Yes. And, it was just some little quirks here and there on the attack and all that. I believe Morrow had one where he just hit a really crappy shot, not even towards goal.
That's such Morrow.
And so I was kind of like, okay, I'm sure we'll get an equalizing goal soon. Then you got that foul outside the box, which I was in a perfect position for Romel Kyoto to take the shot.
Yeah.
And he did. He just left Melia just sitting there,
and it was funny because Melia had started so far to the right that he had no chance to get it, and I think he knew as soon as that shot was hit, he wasn't getting there.
Yes.
So he basically invited Kyoto to shoot it at that spot, and Kyoto was like, "Okay, fine, I'll take it. Thanks." It was literally like the keeper had Melia had no reason to be that far to the right. And regardless, I don't care because we won. But still, continue.
And so then right after that goal, so I started feeling a lot more confident.
You could feel the attitude and atmosphere in the stadium.
Yeah, because even when Kansas City was trying to attack, the defense looked really good out there and were able to stop most of the attacks coming in.
And I will say this: fans got a lot louder after that goal. You could hear it on the TV. I was not able to go because I had work stuff going on, but you could hear it on TV that the fans were much more into it at that point.
Yes, I thought that was. I had not seen something like the fans being as loud for what the attendance was.
Yeah.
The fact that the upper bowl was closed and it was all pretty much
sound
3/4 of the lower bowl.
Yeah, sound carries really well in the stadium when the upper bowl is empty because it has enough wall to reverberate off that it'll carry, and it amplifies it. But when there's people packed but when there's a bunch of people in the upper sections, it just mutes and deafens the sound quite a bit. So that's something to keep.
That's Acoustics 101 for you, everybody.
Essentially, sound engineering.
But yeah, I really enjoyed the match. That even though when they got the leading goal, they still kept on attacking. They didn't settle for just defeating them 2-1. They knew, and I think it also has a lot to do with they knew the capability of Sporting Kansas City, what they could do if they let off.
Oh yeah.
And so they're like, no, we might as well just kill this match right here and there, and they just kept on attacking. Morrow, yes, he scored a brace, but still he could have
easily had a hattie. Yeah.
Yeah. And I know there was one before he scored the second goal where he was 1-on-1 against Melia. There was nobody at him, and he's like, I don't know whether he thought is this really happening?
I think he was trying to curve it, and it had no curve, and so it just went wide. But yeah, I know the one you're talking about. Melia came out, he had the ball. He hits the ball, and I think he was hoping it was going to bite, and it never bit, so it never curved back towards goal. And it just went right out of bounds, about 7 yards wide of the goal.
Yeah, and then when his second goal, he tried to do the same
Melia
thing.
did a great job to get that first save, but it just bounced right to Morrow, and Morrow did the right thing and dribbled around and away, and then just found his shooting lane and
the nutmeg also helped. Okay.
Buried it. He five-holed that poor defender.
That was his first goal, actually.
Yeah, I think that was his first. I know that was his second goal, because Kyoto had the first one, didn't he?
No, I mean like Morrow's first.
Oh, it was his first goal. Yes. Yeah.
And the second one was the beautiful cross.
Yes.
By Maines.
Oh, such a great cross. Yeah, absolutely. 100% yes. So let me get your thoughts on this. How important to you is CONCACAF is getting a berth in CONCACAF Champions League?
A lot. It's very important to me for the Dynamo to get a berth in the CONCACAF Champions League because of the importance this Champions League is for this region, for the CONCACAF region, especially with you get the opportunity to play against Liga MX teams and try to fight for a spot for the Club World Cup.
Absolutely.
And I think this past Club World Cup has shown that if you put your focus on it, even MLS teams, even with all the handicaps against them, which is the fact that the knockouts phase begins in the middle of preseason for MLS teams, and the Liga MX teams are like match fit at that point, that you can still able to make a decent showing to even try to win it.
Yeah,
I think Toronto had the opportunity to take it all, but hashtag Michael Bradley.
Well, that always happens when you have Michael Bradley on your team.
But the point is, at least for me, is the importance of that, especially with the Dynamo not being able to haven't won silverware in a while, so that brings Open Cup, and then with CONCACAF Champions League, it might attract more people. Hey, you know what? They're playing in an international tournament. Might get a lot more people to focus on the Dynamo in the city.
Well, and if nothing else, they usually get to host one or two of those matches for the group stage, and when you can host especially if they can, possibly draw a Liga MX team. I mean, that gives you a huge boost to attendance in that first round, and it also tests your depth in the first round if you get a Liga MX team. But the other thing too, and I think this is important for fans to keep in mind, there's kind of a bad side of this too, which is you're going to get if you do win the Open Cup and you do get the CCL berth, you are going to expose, at least in Kyoto and some other players, to possibly be picked up by some other clubs in Liga MX. At least obviously already has the Liga MX ties. Kyoto does not, though. And Kyoto, with the form that he's been on, if we can get the Open Cup, it would not surprise me. Or not Open Cup. If we get to CCL and do well in the group stage, it would not surprise me if teams came knocking from Liga MX for him.
Gabe says that there's no more group stage.
Okay. Well, it's the first I've heard of it, but okay. I mean, he could be 100% right. I'd have to look at that. I don't know.
I'll take a look at that.
When your team's not in the CCL, you tend not to pay attention to it. Just being honest. Interesting. Yeah, please find that out, because that is very, very interesting. So while you're looking that up, let's jump to our final quick topic for the night, which is the Houston Dash. There is a Houston Dash update that we need to go through. First of all, the Dash played North Carolina Courage this past weekend, and they lost 0-2. No goals scored, and I think they've now gone 3 matches without a goal. Kaylia High was out on quote-unquote national team duty, which we'll get to that in a minute. And to North Carolina's credit, they are the best team in the league, so it really shouldn't surprise anyone that they did blank the Dash. Let's see here. Where's that? Oh, no, I take that back. They have scored 1 goal in each of their last. Okay. Wow, I was looking at the wrong match. They played. Wow, I was really off. Okay, sorry. They played Washington Spirit and they won 1-0 on the 21st of July. Wow, man, how was I so far off on my date and everything? That was crazy. So yay, they won against Washington Spirit, who, if I remember correctly, were coming into this match having only won 1 or 2 matches. The one match, they've only won 1 match, and it was against the lowest team in the league. So that was interesting. Come on out on August 5th. That's a Sunday. Wait, is that versus? So it's here. Yeah. Sorry, I really should have researched this beforehand. Sunday, August 5th at 7:30 p.m. against the Utah Royals. It is the Salute to Women Veterans Night, presented by Sasol, who is now a sponsor of the Houston Dash, which is really awesome and really cool. And then there are 5 matches after that left in the season. If I'm not mistaken, the Dash technically, by mathematics, have a chance to get a playoff spot, but that's about the only way they can get a playoff spot is mathematically. The reason why I wanted to bring up the Dash, even though this is a really quick talk, actually there's 2 reasons, but first, so Kaylee Ohai, like I mentioned, she has, she was called up to the U.S. Women's National Team by Jill Ellis, given a shot, and has now been sent back to Houston Dash. No reason given, though, to be fair, a lot of those players ahead of her are better than her. Just in general, they have higher name recognition. Here's my problem, though. And it's the same problem I have with the U.S. Men's National Team when they do these same types of things for the call-ups and stuff like that, is that a lot of times they call up these older players or these players that are established players instead of calling up players that are in form. Giving them a chance to show what they can do in a tournament like this is a perfect opportunity. You would get the opportunity to see what Kaylia can bring, especially in the form that she's in, you don't even have to start her. Just give, I mean, it would be good to start her, but, just give her an opportunity. I mean, you called up Kristen Press, you called up Alex Morgan, you called up Megan Rapinoe, you called up Amy Rodriguez, you called up, and there's somebody else, you called up one other forward. My problem is Crystal Dunn. You called up all of these forwards, and yet all of them have secured their spot. They're not going to get called up for the Women's World Cup. Every one of those is going to get called up for the Women's World Cup. They don't need more minutes with the national team. It does no good for the national team for them to keep getting minutes in meaningless tournaments. So give Kalia Ohai, give other players a chance to show what they can do. You might just be able to find out that maybe your national team has some depth you didn't know about, some depth that can help you out in the event of injuries instead of having to find players you already know who they are. This is your opportunity to go through your talent pool and start to pick out those players that should be given an opportunity. Amy Rodriguez is coming off a knee injury. I totally get why she was called up. You want to see what she can still bring and if she still has it. But to have Kristen Press, to have to have Kristen Press, to have Morgan, God, I'm losing my mind. To have Kristen Press, to have Alex Morgan, to have Tobin Heath, to have Megan Rapinoe, these same players that we've seen for 2 Women's World Cup cycles now, 8 years, trotted back out there over and over and over again. At some point, just give them a freaking break. They don't need to be part of this tournament. It does nobody any good except for tournament organizers, and you can afford for one of those players not to be there. Your tournament turnout is not going to be significantly less because one of those 5 forwards is not on the roster. I'm sorry, it's just not. So, yes, I'm a little heated about that. I apologize. So your thoughts on Kalia Ohai being sent back to the Dash after a very, very short stint with the U.S. Women's National Team?
Missed opportunity.
For who? For who?
For basically to see what Kalia could offer to the women's national team, like you say, in the run of form that she is in. I think even in the women's national team, you should start thinking about rejuvenating the roster and not have to rely too much on the players who have already won it all. Mm-hmm. And I mean, they're not going to put us. In theory, they're not going to put as much of an effort because they've already won the World Cup. Absolutely. So you got to bring in these younger players that have not been in that situation yet, and are eager and are hungry to take the women's national team once again to prepare to the World Cup, win the World Cup again with this new blood. Absolutely. If you're going to continue, and that's what happened with the national team, and with the men's national team, and then look what happened.
Absolutely, 100%, yes.
You kept on calling up like the Bradleys, the Dempseys, the Altidores, the Howards. Yeah. And it was just what's the word I'm looking for? Mediocrity.
It was very difficult to replenish the talent pool when you have no idea what your talent pool even is, because the only players you're giving a shot at the national team are, and you were giving spot minutes, you were giving 10, 15 minutes here and there to young players, but then the rest of the time was these old players who've already proven they can play at that level. The problem is you're putting extra minutes on those old players. So, it's a catch-22. If you don't play the old players, you have an opportunity to play young players. Give the young players an opportunity to show that they belong on that team, and to also build some chemistry with the other players. Eventually, at some point, you run out. These players no longer are there. Your Kristen Presses, your Alex Morgans, your Megan Rapinoes, your Crystal Dunns. Guess what? They get older. At some point, they are no longer going to be able to perform at that national team level, and you're still going to trot them out there because they're name players. At some point, the money is no longer worth the value and quality overall of your national team. Doesn't matter if it's women or men. It does not matter. At some point, you have to play youth. At some point, you have to find out what is in your talent pool. At some point, you have to find out what your depth really is. The Tournament of Nations is an opportunity to do that. It is not an opportunity to trot out these old workhorses that do not belong in this tournament anymore. This is time to show what you got in your depth and ranks. And for the future, it is, absolutely. So yeah, as you can tell, I'm not a happy camper about that. No, so one other thing I wanted to bring up about the Dash before we go to break, and this is a teaser going into our second hour. There is one bright spot in the Houston Dash right now, and it's not just Kaylee Ojai. Right now, the Houston Dash have an amazing supporters group in the Bayou City Brigade. They are out there match after match after match. They're by far the loudest section in the stadium. Not that that should be a surprise. They have multiple, they pretty much have an entire drum line. And it's all constructed out of, I think a couple of them have buckets that they take out there and they're beating on. Some of them have a couple of drum sets. They don't have trumpets or anything like that. But they're out there 90 minutes. They're out there chanting. They're out there jumping up and down. They're out there being noisy. But at the same time, they are, and their group continues to grow. And it continues to grow because of the atmosphere that they are providing to the Houston Dash. Not only that, the Houston Dash have kind of partnered with them a little bit, and the relationship has grown significantly. There are opportunities afforded to the Bayou City Brigade simply by being involved with, keeping track of, and being connected to the Dynamo front office. Dash front office. This leads me to, the point that we will get into in the second hour and the discussion of the second hour, which is we're going to discuss the supporters group in the second hour, supporters groups in the second hour. We're going to discuss the struggles. We're going to discuss the good and the bad. And we're going to, we've got the phone lines open, and we are expecting at least one phone call from a member of the Texian Army. Hector, Blues fan, is going to call in. And so we're expecting him around 8:05 or so. We're going to go to break now. We're probably going to take actually a 5 or 6 minute break, and then when we come back, we'll set him up and get him ready. And then I'm going to let him just go, and then we're going to talk. And we're going to talk for an entire hour about the supporters groups. So what I'm asking for is, if you are listening and you are either a member of a supporters group, or B, you have an opinion about a supporters group or these supporters groups, do me a favor and call in. You can call in now if you want. We can set you up. The number to call in is
956-622-5977, and it's posted right up there.
So do us a favor, call in. I know you have opinions about the supporters groups. You made it very clear on Twitter today that you do. So do me a favor, call in. It's really important. We want your opinions. We want your takes. Even if they're incredibly hot, we'll figure it out. Don't worry about it. But we definitely want your takes, because this is an issue. This is something that needs to be addressed. It cannot be ignored. And it's something that it's going to take a concerted effort, even from those of us that are not part of the supporters groups, to address and figure out. So with that, we're going to break. We'll be back in a few minutes. Thank you.
Can you feel it? The fire in your soul, leaping at the chance for love. Can you feel it? Haunting your senses, letting all your feelings go. But I can feel it rushing through my veins. Your love's the only drug I know. But we've been playing the hand now with death, so we can light it up. I know that we can make it through the night, but I can feel the fire inside, so there won't be nothing tonight. We crossed the line, and now it's clear to see the light behind the suffering. Believe we'll finally be free.
Oh, we're back. You're not going to do the stinger for me? Like, I was so ready for that.
No.
Oh, you're killing me, Smalls. All right, so welcome back. You're listening to Generation Orange. This is hour 2 of our 3-hour show, which hopefully does not continue past this week. We are going to talk supporters groups, and on the line we have Blues Fan, who is a member of Texian Army. Before we get to Blues Fan, though, I need to read these. These were posted by somebody today on Twitter. Actually, it was Kenny today on Twitter, and man, this was awesome. I was so glad that somebody posted this, and it's really good to read. And I'm sure you have read this by now. Blues Fan, I'm going to read this. So the first one, and this is in response to a thing posted about, the title was, and this is on Reddit, time to put our supporters section back under a covered stand. These Frisco, you-know-what's outperforming our section. So the response was, in fairness to the organization, it's more difficult than a lot of people on these boards can care to admit, myself included. Personally, I like to imagine a scale. On the right arm, you have everything making someone decide to go to a game. Friends, love of soccer, a particular player, etc. On the left, you have everything that factors into them not going. Bad weather, expense, work, traffic, etc. Everyone is different, and all those factors have different weights to them depending on the person. Some people will never go because they just hate the game, and nothing you put on the right arm will make them go. Similarly, you have people like myself who will go no matter what, and it takes something serious to prevent them from going. The vast majority are somewhere in the middle. All the organization can really do is add things on the right and minimize those things on the left side of the scale, and try not to make them weigh too much so when a prospective ticket buyer is doing the mental math, the right side weighs more. They could and probably need to lower prices or tickets and concessions. They made a deal with Metro for free rides with a ticket, which was smart, to help with travel. And the team needs to be entertaining, which I think they have been, in order to convince people to go. All that being said, there's a lot of problems that are out of their hands. Houston's size makes any trip to BBVA from the outside suburbs a haul, and no matter how far someone is used to driving, and it does factor into their decision to go. The weather, which I've seen given as an excuse for not going countless times, cannot be changed. They could have mitigated some of it with a roofed indoor stadium, but that was cost prohibitive. But that ship has already sailed. The supporters, to address this thread's original point, also need to do more and have played a role in the decline of the game day atmosphere. Texian Army is a shadow of its former self and has basically become a large drinking group who likes to stand around the supporters section. But the majority don't sing or just prefer to watch the game and not participate too much. Most are good people and fun to hang out with, but when it comes to the actual support in the stadium, El Batallon is the real group. They're the ones who sing, who drum, and who've actually expanded since the move. They've worked out a better working relationship with the front office, and they're the ones who do the procession into and out of the stadium. Full credit to them, they've done a fine job. That being said, however, the overly repetitive nature of their songs and the fact that they're in Spanish prevents a lot of people from outside the section and in Texian Army from participating. You can only pretend to sing so many verses of Matador before you stop caring and it becomes background noise for the next 7 to 10 minutes. It doesn't help that they don't have a roof anymore, granted, but that's a stadium design failure and one that wouldn't matter as much if Texian Army would actually participate. Long story short, you have a dominant supporters group with their own style that's working for them, and a group too lazy, ouch, and set in their ways to help them or provide an alternative support style that could catch on. It's kind of similar to DC's situation, except our front office realizes they need the Hispanic community group. So that's one. So keep that in the back of your mind, because that wasn't a long enough read for me. And then so the next one was a question of when did El Batallón get moved to the upper section.
I can read that one if you want.
I got it. It's right here. I like reading.
But
what?
That way you don't get tired.
Oh, go ahead. You're fine. I mean, I'm tired either way, so.
Okay, so the second article is, as someone who was there during the meeting where the move was decided, I just everyone here to know that it wasn't just the FO that made the move. The supporters did have input. The FO was going to move the supporters no matter what because they needed the space to open the vault, expand the concourse, change more for the covered seating, etc. They initially offered the bottom sections of 116 to 121. Basically, they wanted a Nordeck Columbus corner thing attached to the Budweiser deck as the supporter bar and keep us on camera. The Budweiser deck wasn't making them money, so they decided to give it to us. The supporters chose that top section because it would help us expand. There are a lot more seats than the old one. The supporter bar would still be a part of it, which only lasted for 1 year with smaller pours, but then the FO raised the prices anyway, so it didn't even matter. And the idea was to expand to the bottom section and form a wall once we had enough people. Anyone who bought a beer garden ticket would get access to the section because they would be the most likely fit into the supporter demographic and we could recruit them in theory. Long story short, it didn't work. We technically have more people on our section than we did back then. Old section capped out at about 300, 350 compared to 600 plus now. But we lost the drink discount, the shade, the TV exposure, and the field proximity. People immediately started complaining about the heat and lack of sound bounce. No one was really informed about the access to the section with Budweiser tickets, and the team was terrible, so no one even wanted to come up. The groups will never move back, even if they wanted to. The FO have too much invested and will never allow it, and the stadium was never built with supporters in mind like the Orlando, LAFC, and Atlanta stadiums. The Dynamo built a stadium for corporate tickets and networking at the expense of supporters, and that's what we're dealing with now. Our first section was S, our current section is S, and the stadium itself is S for supporters.
That's not what the S stood for, just so that's clear. Okay, so Blues, with no interjection on my part, I open the floor to you. Edson, do me a favor, and can you put those in Dynamo, those two links in Dynamo Discord so that he can read them here in a minute?
Sure.
Go ahead, though. You listen to it. Good deal.
They can't hear him.
Hold on just a second. They can't hear you. Let me try this. Hold on. Go ahead and talk, Hector. Not Hector, sorry. Santos. By the way, his name is Santos, if anybody's wondering. Hold on. Well, it'll take him a minute to catch up. Go ahead and keep talking. He's unmuted. It's not that. unpress that multiple times with no change.
Go ahead and speak.
Oh boy.
Keep speaking, Santos.
Oh, so
Okay, looks like
in short, it's been an
Are you fixed? Now?
interesting thing.
Yes.
Okay.
It said about the Yon and the Texian army, but
All right, Santos. So, okay, I'm going to introduce you again. We're going to start over. I am so sorry to those people that have been sitting and trying to figure out why they can't hear him. It's because Edson made a fail. Actually, I think it was a combination of both of us. All right, with that said, so we just finished reading the comments from, or not the comments, but the responses on Reddit. And so let's get your thoughts on those Reddit articles in particular, and specifically about the supporter section, and specifically there were a couple of very pointed thoughts about Texian Army in there too.
They're not wrong. They're not wrong. As much as I love the guys there, as much as I love talking to them, I've made a few good friends that I've known for since I started. They were the ones that were willing to come up to me and talk to me in person. But those comments weren't wrong. It's dwindled. I've seen it in the past where Texian Army were pretty much the supporters group to follow and lead, and it's dwindled. And there's not been really a way to kind of bring any new life into it. I'm not saying that it can't be changed, but it is a very, very difficult manner to fix in the sense. Not only that, for El Batallón itself, they're an amazing group that do what they do best. And you can see it on the YouTube videos. You could see it when you hear the entry, when they do the leave. They're the stars of the supporters group. But even they have their own faults as well in trying to bring people in terms of how they conduct their own things. And I can't really get into that because I'm not a part of their group, but I could kind of feel there's a different vibe towards their end between ours.
Absolutely.
And even with the stadium itself, again, the article was right. That stadium was never meant intentionally for supporters. It was meant for whatever they had to do to earn that money back, whatever they needed to do to get that taken care of. And it did hurt to hear the Reddit comments, and it hurt more for the Discord chat with the talks of how loud El Matador was on Saturday. It did not feel good to see that. And that, I'm not even going to say that we have an excuse, mainly towards the fact that they may have a roof overhang on their side, and the noise did project. But even then, you would think, it being your biggest rivals, that you would do your best to make some sort of effort to showing otherwise.
Absolutely. And I will say there were a couple of times, and it was started from the old supporters section, which is that section right next to the new patio, or whatever they call that, patio on the pitch. And they, there were a couple of times where El Matador were trying to start a Let's Go Dallas chant, and it was quickly drowned out by Let's Go Dynamo chants. That was good to hear. It showed that there are fans in attendance, even casuals, who will get into the chants and will join in the fun. So long as it's kind of handled correctly.
From what I'm getting at, the details that you all are talking about in regards to this derby. My main concern is, why didn't they put El Matador in the corner? Why did they put him underneath the roof? Number one.
Well,
that's where they always have.
Yeah, that's the away supporters section. That's where they've basically set that specifically aside. Part of it is the number of seats that are in that section. Part of it is the way that they can control that section. And part of it is by being right at that section, they're not on the corner. On a corner, they would actually project more because they would still have, even though they're not directly under the roof, all they would have to do is turn towards the roof and it would carry the music all the way down. It would actually be louder.
Okay.
Number two.
Because last time I came to a derby, I came with my sister, and I was sitting at, I believe it was section 128. We had the Dallas fans behind us. Mm-hmm. And they did not, from what I'm hearing, they did not project as loud as people are saying that they projected in this past derby.
They had a smaller contingent for that derby, too.
Oh, they brought a full force. It was actually the biggest I've seen them bring in.
Yeah, no. This time they did have a lot more people this time.
They were serious. They came in fully prepared to overshadow, and they did. They actually brought a lot of it, and I will give them their props for that.
You know, Santos, I think
The
part
one
of
thing
that,
I do, mhm.
I think part of that, and the reason why they brought such a heavy contingent this time, is I think they were honestly embarrassed last season when the Dynamo did the same thing to them in their own stadium without having to have a roof over them, by the way. And so I think that was a bit of an embarrassment and a bit of a slap in the face, and they felt the only way that they could overcome that and the only way they could deal with that was a direct rebuttal right back at us. And us being just in general the supporters, fans and supporters of the team. Anyways, go ahead and continue.
So even then, I do want to address one thing. I see on the comments, Cisco did bring it up twice on Twitter and then on here about the differences between the groups. Yes, there's a big divide between the two groups. There's some that do join both. I know a few of them, and they seem pretty happy that they're able to move back and forth, but it is a completely different world if you don't speak Spanish between El Batallón and the Texian Army. It's like worlds different even for me, because I can speak both languages and I can understand both sides, but he's not lying. And it's just a scary thought that we're separated within ourselves. And that's just mainly a leadership thing that I don't ever see worked out unless something completely gets that fixed. And the way the FO doesn't want to work on that, and they'll gladly show El Batallón on video, but they'll only talk to Texian Army at points about things. It's just a whole mess of it's interesting of its own.
I just feel that, for example, that it just becomes so, and I think we've mentioned it before, and Cisco's kind of mentioning this as well. The whole, when you mentioned that you're not part of their group, in other words, when you talked about El Batallón, Bluespan, he says that it speaks volumes, and he has a point. The fact that we have two supporters groups that are technically supposed to be cheering for the same team, but yet they don't feel there's no relationship between both of them.
One is not necessarily inclusive of the other.
Yes, and I do see that, because both of them have different hangouts for the pregame, the pre-match,
post match. Yeah.
Yes, and post match, and then El Batallón does their own thing when they march in. Texian Army is already up there before them. They're setting up the Texian Army banner, and that's just about it. And like you mentioned Blues.
Texian Army, they just go out on their own. They don't even go out as a group. You could actually pinpoint a few of the group members on their own. They'll walk in on their own. It's not a unified thing itself. If you get a chance, once they end it, either people are helping the setup to end, or they're already going. So it's not even as a unified thing like El Batallón does it.
And that's the thing. That's that you mentioned that is the case. That's just sad, because you're not. I mean, one of the things that you've got to work on with the Texian Army is obviously trying to get yourself together as a unit. If you cannot get yourself to work as a unit, you cannot expect to work as a unit with another group. At least that's the way I see it. And if you're saying that, they don't come in as a Texian Army, they just go in as individuals rather than as a group. In this case, Texian Army. Then really there's not much you can do until that is squared away. If we want to work for a unified supporters group, or at least some sort of relationship between El Batallón and Texian Army.
So I think I'm gonna kind of defend Texian Army here a little bit, and actually El Batallón. I think there should never actually be a quote unquote unified supporters group, and I hope we never get to that point, because there are two very, very different culture bases here that operate as Santos said repeatedly. They operate very differently. They have different. I'm going to use the word agendas. They have different agendas. Their primary purpose is to support the team. But the way that they go about that are two very different ways. And I don't think those two ways necessarily, I don't think there's a happy medium for those two ways. They're very starkly different, and they need to be starkly different, because you attract different types of people that way. You attract different types of fans that way. And so I feel like it's okay for them to be separate. However, I would really like to see them have a better relationship. I would like to see bridges being built instead of being torn down over old feuds that simply need to die, over old slights that simply need to die, over old thoughts that simply need to die. It's not going to happen anytime soon, but it needs to happen. And, remember, and this is as much to you, Blues, as it is to anybody else in Texian Army, as anybody else in El Batallon, and any fan out there. Your number one reason to be at that match is to support your team. Above everything else, you support the team. I don't care if you're at a tailgate. I don't care if you're coming in the stadium during a march. It doesn't matter to me how you're doing it. Support the team. But at the same time, you're both there supporting the team. That's the bridge that needs to be crossed. That's the bridge that bridges that gap between Texian Army and El Batallon. You're there supporting the team. Be proud of that first and foremost. Find the pride in that. Find the humility in that. The fact that, hey, guess what? It doesn't matter the color of my skin. It doesn't matter who I support, who I voted for. It doesn't matter my political leaning. It doesn't matter how much money I make. It doesn't matter where I got my tickets. It doesn't matter who my family is. It doesn't matter where I came from, what my country of origin is. It doesn't matter my ethnicity. It doesn't matter my nationality. It doesn't matter who I'm there for, which player I'm supporting or players I'm supporting. At the end of the day, I bleed, I sweat, and I cry orange. If that is not your sole purpose for being in that supporters group, and this is not to use Blues fan, just so you know, if that's not your sole purpose for being in one of those supporters groups, if you're there simply because your friend is there, get out. It is time these supporters groups put their big boy britches on, grow the hell up, and support your damn team like you're supposed to. I like the supporters groups. I like the people that are leading them. It is time they grow the hell up. This is not a little high school sorority party. This is not a college frat house. It is time to grow up. These are adult issues. We handle them like adults. That means we talk. That means we open dialogue. That does not mean we hide behind Twitter wars. That does not mean we hide behind Facebook wars. That does not mean we hide behind the excuse that the front office treats one group better than the other. It doesn't matter. It is time to support the team like the team deserves to be supported. These players are out here bleeding and putting their hearts on the line, match in and match out, 110%.
Amen.
Match after match after match. And if you guys can't unite over that, and again, this is not to you, Blues fan, if you cannot unite over that, then it's time for somebody else to stand up and somebody else to take the reins.
Amen.
Whew. I did not expect that to go there. And like I said, I like the guys that are running both organizations. I really do. I think that both organizations have great purposes and have reasons to be there. But there needs to be a focus first and foremost on supporting the club. That has to come first.
All right, so quick thing. So Cisco brings that up, and I was going to bring this up as well because this really irks me from El Batallon.
Yeah.
Would it kill those in the supporters group sections to show up ahead of time and fill out the section before the 20th minute? They're supposed to be the examples.
Yeah.
Why are you waiting until
there's
after?
times when they'll show up, but...
Yeah, but more often than not, they're like, it's the 10th minute and they're barely making their way towards the stadium. I mean, come on. Does it kill you to keep track of your watch?
I mean, you have enough people that somebody could be doing time watching for the walk to the stadium.
But that's the problem. Okay, so in the time that I was with El Batallon, everybody's just paying attention, like of drinking beer, listening to music. It's chitty chatty.
Yeah.
Then all of a sudden, they still have to go out there, give out the flags. Somebody's gonna release the smoke bomb. Everybody's getting into formation. They start playing music and dancing at the street, and then they're making their way towards the stadium. Have to get in through the stadium, through security, one by one.
Yep.
Then regroup in the concourse and from the southwest end, and then from there march over to their section. Going to get in a one-man. It's like one by one.
Yeah.
Up the section, yada, 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 and then everybody's there, and all right, let's start.
Yeah.
I mean, that takes a long time. Why not? If you know it's going to take a long time, why not plan accordingly so that by the time you do all of that, I'm not telling you to get rid of all of this stuff about Batallon, but by the time you do all of your little pre-match, what's the word I'm looking for?
Activities.
Ceremony, yes, activities.
Fanfare.
You get there in time that by the time the referee blows the whistle to start, you have already set the atmosphere at the stadium.
So I will say this, and this may not be specifically an El Batallon thing. This may be something that the front office, unfortunately, has caused. Bear in mind the time that El Batallon begin their march through the stadium. Most ticket holders and most people with tickets have already made it their way to the seats. So from the front office standpoint, it may be that they're trying to do that intentionally so that El Batallon don't get disrupted on their way there, so that El Batallon unintentionally can't cause any issues with perhaps other supporters groups, not Texian Army, but away traveling supporters groups. It could also be perhaps that they don't want away fans that are not sitting in the away supporters section to accidentally run into El Batallon due to previous events that have taken place, whether factual or not. The fact that the accusations exist out there says a lot. So that could be part of the reason why that happens basically match after match. The fact that there are times when they are there early or on time tells me that even though I want it to be a front office problem, it is probably an El Batallon problem.
No, it has to be an El Batallon problem. And to the point, and Cisco also brings up this point, who, by the way, actually, the Toros players actually do this. So, but anyways, so he says, also, I get jealous of other clubs when the entire team goes over to the supporters and gives them rounds of applause. I look over at the ends of matches and half the section is already cleared out.
Yeah.
I will point this out on that part. That's actually what I saw there, and I actually do want to bring it up. I did bring it up the last time I did talk about the supporters sections as the Dynamo front office deciding to give people access to the supporters group sections who aren't the members there. A lot of the times you go past the first 10 sections, it's all families.
Yeah.
So it's kind of tougher on our end to make it look like it's something that we do leave, we do stay. But a lot of the time it's the families that are exiting our supporter sections, and it does make it seem like it's one of those things that we're leaving earlier than the others, but it's not always that case.
You know, and I think there's something to be said that, you know, if Texian Army and El Batallon were larger and they basically could own that entire section, they wouldn't own it per se, but if they were large enough that match in and match out, they were selling that section out, the front office would make a way for them to all be there without those families having to, you know, be part of that section. They would move those families to another section. So I think it's important to remember that while some of these excuses come up, and, you know, that they're not intended to be, you know, just flimsy excuses. They're just from your perception. But it's important to remember that some of that is of the supporters group's own doing by simply not filling up that section consistently. If they filled that section up consistently, I guarantee you the front office would not be offering those tickets up to other ticket holders. They wouldn't be selling those tickets to anybody else. They're available for supporters, members and fans to purchase. It's not like those tickets are purchased at the beginning of the season. They can be, but they're not. They're usually, you know, single game tickets for some of them are because they're general admission for the most part, if I'm not mistaken. But they're also the cheapest tickets in the stadium. So if the front office is going to offer those tickets up to other people, then of course they're going to be bought up first because they're the cheapest way to experience the game. And I think it does cause a bit of a problem when it comes to the supporters group culture in the stadium itself and the atmosphere in the stadium itself, because now you're dealing with these families with kids and what have you up there. And that just, it can be a detrimental, it can be detrimental to the actual atmosphere because it's a lot harder to stand and chant and cheer with your group when there's really only 10 of you doing it and there's 50 people in your section.
Yeah.
No real objections to that. More towards trying to do what you have to do, and then you've got a family of four. And again, this goes back to also ticket pricing, which is kind of tougher the farther out you get out from the supporter sections.
Mm-hmm.
But whole different ball game for that, because I'm actually more willing to give up my ticket. I'm willing to pay for a different section and then join the Texian Army. So I'm losing out on what I'm supposed to have experienced to try to support this team, and it's a little bit different for most people.
So
Absolutely.
Darby is on the chat right now.
Hey, Darby.
So what's going on, Darby? So she says, so here's the thing. I draw an important distinction between quality and quantity. I would rather have a smaller section of engaged members that are there early and being engaging through the match or throughout the match.
I actually, Darby, just so you know, I do 100% agree with you. I would rather have a smaller, more engaged supporters group. But if that's going to be the case, then the front office, and that would fall in the front office to make that distinction that we want quality over quantity, and that they need to set aside a specific section of that section for Texian Army only, so that you guys not only are all together, but that you guys can remain together throughout the entire match.
And then she also adds, what we have now is large numbers of members that are in it for the beer at the tailgate and the cheap seats and won't get in on time.
Absolutely, 100%.
Ooh.
100%. And she's
And
spot
the
on.
other distinction, I mean, it would be great, again, for the chance itself, but there has to be something inclusive for the whole stadium to get involved. Again, it's interesting for me when I sit in my own section. That's when I don't choose to go to the supporter section itself, section 225, but they themselves have their own little fun separate from what the supporter sections has, and I do enjoy that.
Yeah.
The only problem is it's kind of inclusive to what they're doing in other sections as well. I'm not sure who else does different things, but again, there's just that difference in between the supporter section itself and the average people, or the people with the season tickets who want to support. But
you have the supporters and the
it's a whole different thing. It's crazy to believe that we're having to fight our own supporters groups sometimes, and it's crazy to think that.
Yeah. It's like you have your supporters that are in the supporters group sections, and then you have your supporters that exist throughout the stadium. And I will say this, I know a lot of supporters that exist throughout the stadium because they got to a point where they just felt that the supporters groups were not offering them what they were really there to get. And that's a shame. That is an absolute shame. But here's a question for you, and this is as much for Darby as well. How much did moving from Robertson Stadium to BBVA Compass Stadium actually hurt Texian Army? I don't think it hurt El Batallon very much, but how much did that hurt Texian Army? Because there was a pretty good contingent of U of H students that were part of Texian Army early on, and now that demographic of Texian Army seems to have dwindled to almost next to nothing.
I'm actually not sure how to answer that one, because for me, I joined the Texian Army after Robertson. I actually didn't get to fully experience Robertson
the U of H side of it.
That really hurts, because I've heard a lot of great things about the times then and how amazing it was. But I would think, you would assume with the demographic being younger, it would have probably hurt the Texian Army a lot more than it would at Batallon.
Yeah. It's just
especially the same way Atlanta has it run with youth involved in their supporters group. It helps. It does never hurts. It only helps.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Well, and it creates that bridge too, right? Because those are your younger demographic tends to be the ones that are going to be a little bit more rowdy. They're going to be the ones that are they have more time, honestly, to devote to things like, helping come up with songs and chants and tifos and banners and, and helping organize volunteer opportunities, helping, reach out to other fans and being more involved. And so I thought that was something that just kind of popped in my head today. And it's been something that's been on my mind that I've been curious about, especially if there are any, and I'd love to get James and Chris on. I'd love to get Paco on. Pato on. Names are not my forte. To get Pato on to discuss, and not at the same time, but to discuss, how, how people can get involved with the supporters groups, how people can join, because there are those out there that honestly, if they were given an opportunity, would love to get involved and join, but frankly, either nobody reaches out to them, or even if they do go, it's one person that maybe says, hey, welcome, welcome, thanks for coming. And that's kind of the extent of it. And then they're just kind of in this section nobody's checking on how they're doing. Nobody's trying to see how they're, how things are going, what they can do for them, that kind of thing. Nobody follows up after the match. Now that to me just seems like such a simple thing that somebody could be doing on a regular basis. Follow up with people that have been in your section that you don't see again the next match. Find out what's going on. Is there something you could do to help them get a ticket? Is there something you can do to, maybe there's something going on personally that your entire group can rally around, as something to unite your group around as a cause. Just things like that. And it pains me to hear that the supporters groups aren't taking the initiative, and some of that falls because a lot of their board members don't have the time because they have their own families and they have their own lives, but that there are not members that have stepped up to say, hey, I'd love to take this opportunity to reach out to these people that came to this last match to see if they want to come to another one, to see if we can hook them up with tickets, or to see if we can help them buy tickets, or to hook them up with a season ticket rep, or whatever it may be, or see if we can get them out to the next tailgate at least, whatever it may be, to just try to keep these guys engaged. Obviously, if they go to one match and they're in the supporters group and they're having fun, as soon as they leave that match and as soon as they're gone from post-match activities, they tend to start to fade from that enjoyed euphoric experience of being at the match, that high from being at the match, if you will. And then, that dwindles over time. And so if you don't get them in that first week, that first 2 weeks, you're not going to get them after that if they're not coming back already.
So just wanted to bring this up because I was for a while, like I said, with El Batallon. So I was there for about 3-4 matches, and then I started being more involved with the Peel at the time. So I was like, being up there, I'm too busy playing the trombone, not busy
able
enough
to analyze the match.
So I just stopped going.
Yeah.
Honestly, nobody except for Antonio Melendez, who I give a big shout out to, member of El Batallon, actually asked me hey, well, what's going on? Why are you coming? Or we haven't seen you in a while. And I just told him, while I was passing by from King's Court, I just told him, well, you know what? I'm doing this now with the Dynamo podcast.
I was there with you that match.
Yes.
When he pulled you to the side.
Yeah.
I was there. I remember that match.
Yeah, and that he's the only one technically that would ask me why I haven't been with El Batallon anymore, and he understood. He understood why I was doing it, and he said, "All right, But that's the thing. Going back to your topic, that other than that, unless you form some sort of close friendship with somebody, nobody really follows up if people stop going. And also wanted to say something that Darby just posted on the chat. And so she says, yes, the general college team supporters culture was helpful there and didn't translate to PBVA. It's difficult to maintain the culture in a different place, and adds, generally Americans live that culture at college and feel that they graduate from that when they get the diploma.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And she's not wrong.
And I will actually bring in my own experience joining the Texian Army myself. I actually paid for the membership online. Going from that, it took me even a while myself being very kind of cautious on things to actually go to a tailgate. I actually think I remember you guys helping me out last year. It was Sean and it was Andres that told me to talk to James.
Yeah.
Who then I was able to communicate on Twitter, got involved from that point on. And then it took me a little bit because for me, that's one of those things, you're going into a whole new environment, did not know what to expect. And from there, I slowly worked my way in to talking to a few people at that time. So for me, that I've been there a year and a half, I'll pop in and out every so often. I can't imagine someone that's trying to look from the outside in the lots that I've seen on the comments, try to walk in there. It's kind of gotta be tricky to make the walk into the tailgate itself.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
so that's just kind of my 2 cents from it.
That makes a lot of sense. Go ahead.
So Henry Maltez says, I always see supporters groups in the lot pre-gaming, and from my perspective, they aren't giving off an inviting vibe to get people to join. And I did mention that before with El Batallon, the fact that it took me a while to kind of gain up courage to go and ask them, tell them that I was with Stampede before, moved up here to Houston, and I was interested in going up there. Nobody took the initiative to, because I was there with my trombone case.
Yeah, you were ready. I remember.
Yeah. And so like
Oh, wow.
nobody got close to me for a while until I went up. Hey, well, who's the leader? Because
You had to take the initiative to reach out to them, not the other way around. Right?
Yes, exactly.
And you know, I've heard that echoed among so many people. And you know, it's interesting to me, right? And Blues, this is as much for you as it is for Dar, because I want you guys to take this back to James and Chris, because I think it's important for them to hear this, and maybe even just grab this segment. We can cut the audio for you if you want. I've heard it from at least 30 to 40 people, and that's not an exaggeration. That may be an understatement on the number of people that have visited either Texan Army. Actually, most of them were Texan Army, with the exception of Edson and a couple of others that went El Batallon, but that went to the Texan Army tailgate, and then just because they felt like they had to be the one. You know, some people, you have to remember, are introverts, and they're not necessarily going to be the ones to go up, and they're not going to be the ones to be like, oh, hey, hi, I'm so-and-so. And they just felt like nobody took the initiative to come up and greet them, other than, I think James was probably the only one. And, you know, so they felt like, if they're not going to take the initiative to come greet me, do they even really want me here? I think was the attitude they felt. And so, I mean, you're talking 30 to 40 people. Just picture your supporters group. Just picture Texan Army with an additional 30 people. I mean, you know, right? And so that has to be something that needs to be addressed. It can't be something that gets ignored simply because, oh, they just felt that way. If 30 people have felt that way, there's a problem. There's something that has to be addressed.
Because those 30 people could be 30
more people. Could be more than, you know, could be 60 people. I mean, that's just one. You figure each one person, if they talk to 2 people and invite them, that's 60, that's 90 people now instead of just 30. I mean, it's amazing how those numbers inflate very quickly when you grow out of your comfort zone. You know, and like I said, I like James and I like Chris. I think they have, you know, they're very intelligent people. They've done a great job with what they have and the resources available to them. But I also think that there has to be somebody that their sole focus on match day is anytime somebody walks up that they don't recognize, their first thing to do is walk over to them, greet them. Hi, how's it going? What can we do for you? Why are you here? You know, do you want to get involved? Here, let's talk about membership. Let's talk about what, you know, the tailgate. Let's discuss what this is about, why we're here, why we do what we're doing. It's as much a marketing thing that has to be done as it is anything else. The culture can fix itself with the right marketing. The supporters group, you know, not being full can fix itself with the right marketing. But marketing has to take place. Somebody has to take that initiative, and it's not going to be a fan that's outside the organization. It has to be somebody that is in that supporters group right now taking the initiative to say, man, that's a really good call out. Somebody needs to take that role. So just throwing it out there at you, Blues. I don't know, man, but somebody needs to take that role. Doesn't have to be you. I'm just saying.
Yeah, and I can kind of feel how it is reading the comments on here. Believe me myself as an introvert, it just kind of took a hard hit on me to get people involved. And there were a few that were willing to talk. And yeah, again, you're right.
And you know, think about it.
A marketing thing is a big key as well. You know, but also with that, it also takes place where we have to get people interested.
Absolutely. So, you know, think about it this way. For every 9 no's that you get, if you have one more yes, that would have been 3 or 4 additional members out of those 30. I mean, that doesn't sound like a lot, but if those 3 or 4 bring people in, I mean, it inflates. So, yeah, you're going to get some no's, and you know, that's okay. You're going to get some people that are like, man, I'm just here for the beer and I'm just here for the wings. That's okay. Come back for the beer and the wings, because eventually they're going to get caught up in the atmosphere of hanging out with these people.
Just through association.
Just through being there, and they're going to form friendships that way. So all I'm saying is, you know, as somebody from the outside looking in, because that's just not my cup of tea, unfortunately, but as somebody from the outside looking in, like, something's got to change. The status quo is going to mean the death of Texan Army in the next 5 years.
And that would be sad, losing your OG.
It would absolutely. I mean, and I don't think there's any doubt. And I mean, and by death, I don't mean that there wouldn't be people still in that section. But what I mean by that is that there wouldn't be, you know, it would take a very concerted effort to get out of the hole that's currently being, you know, dug, you know, and not intentionally, but just it would take a concerted effort to get out of. And I think it takes a pretty big effort now. It's not. But it's not something that can be ignored. The longer it's ignored, the worse the problem gets.
So, Cisco, I think you hit it right on the head. Oh, by the way, Darby he says Sean for TABOD.
What does BOD mean?
Board of Directors.
Oh God.
So
I
Cisco,
take that challenge, Darby.
No, I was just saying.
Be careful. I will take that challenge.
So Francisco says it's not hard to bring in new fans, but it's really easy to push them away.
Absolutely.
And
that is Cisco. Brother, that you are 100% right on that.
Yeah. So, I mean, and you guys got anything else about it?
Bro, I'm so talked out right now. I need a break for the
One
third
of the-
hour.
So
Jesus.
one of my biggest complaints right now with
refill the
El
water.
Batallon. Yeah, go ahead. One of the biggest complaints I have right now with El Batallon, and I know you're not a part of it. I just wanted to bring this out. So you got like maybe 3 people. You got Pato, and you got another trombonist, and you have, I believe, 1 or 2 trumpeters. Out of, let's say, 60 or so El Batallon members. You're out there on the stands. The only thing you hear are instruments. You don't hear people singing until the instruments get quiet and the drums stop playing. You're talking about huge drums as well, so that's gonna drown out a little bit of the chanting. So where is everybody? Why isn't everybody in El Batallon pulling their own weight when it comes to the chants? It should, like, you with the amount of people that they have right now, it should be possible to be able to still hear the chants, even with the instruments playing. That's my biggest pet peeve out of El Batallon right
And I
now.
will not lie, I've seen El Batallon members trying to pass lyric sheets. I've seen it. It's interesting to see them attempt it, and it's one of those things I actually can't figure out, because I do love the songs that they do come up, and of course they come up with really interesting ones. It's just some of them are just so long to try to memorize the songs. It's very tricky to get them all down. There's still a few that I can't really get off other than the beats itself. There's some I love them, but at the same time, it's just trying to think of the lyrics. Like, boy, what is this? This is a long one.
Yeah.
Here's a suggestion for you to El Batallon, to if anybody who's out there listening to me.
If you haven't already turned off.
El Batallon versus Generation Orange.
Oh God, let's not start there.
I don't know about this one.
Okay, so
I don't know about that one.
all right, so this is my suggestion, and I think they did it. I think they've done it with Wonderwall. Just Wonder. I think that's the only one I've seen so far with Wonderwall. Record your chants, and then add lyrics to the video, and upload that to YouTube, and use your social media to put it out there to the Dynamo fans or to your own supporters groups. That way they can continuously follow along, get used to the lyrics, learn it, so that by the time Saturday or whenever the Dynamo play and you're up there, you're starting to get a general idea of what the lyrics are, and you can actually chant them more confidently. Because other than that, if you're just trying to rely on like trying to figure out what everybody else is saying, that is never going to happen.
No. So, Santos, any closing thoughts before we let you go? You've actually hung in there with us for pretty much the entire hour, so that's kudos to you.
Yeah, I mean, I'm glad to be on for this one. This is actually one of the things didn't think would happen today, but again, I'm glad there are fans out there that are really trying to see what's going on with the supporters group. Considering what was last year, I think an excellent year in terms of what could have been even a better potential to bring back or to rebound.
Yeah.
And this year, now even better, considering we're in the semifinals of the U.S. Open Cup and battling for another playoff spot to make hopefully another deep run into the Cup.
Yep.
I'm glad to see that the interest is there. I'm glad that it's being addressed, and I'm glad that I'm seeing comments about it.
Yeah. It shows, and I hope this to you and Darby and any other Texan Army members that are listening, and even El Batallon members that are listening. It shows that even outside of just Edson and myself, that there is a passionate fan base out there that maybe they're not necessarily supporters in their own right, but they're so passionate about this team and they're so passionate about supporting this team that they're willing to not just shrug off the supporters groups, but that they actually want to see the supporters groups succeed and excel. The fact that they, they're not just like, oh, well, that's their problem, but they actually care and are passionate enough to put in the time and the effort to help come up with solutions and to figure out ways to make it better. That's a fan base that, ultimately can be tapped into to really build something really great over there. And my hope is that from this discussion this week and the one we had not long ago with you on the phone as well, that this continues to spur along discussions to continue to actually grow efforts to reach out and really get those fans that are borderline, or those fans that, maybe they're only going to come to 1 or 2 matches, but then if they kind of get hooked, they have an opportunity. I'm going to throw this out there for you, and this will be my closing thought on this particular subject. And this is for Santos as well as it is for Darby and anybody else listening. Cisco brought a friend of his, and they sat in 102 with me and Cisco back, I don't know, earlier in the season, this season. And then they came back on their own, bought their own tickets, and sat in a completely different section for the Texas Derby. And halfway through that match, sent a text to Cisco and said, "All right, I'm hooked. I'm a Dynamo fan for life."
Let's not forget your niece.
Oh yeah, my niece. Yeah, totally hooked. I've got another friend of mine who I brought to a match earlier in the season. Had never been to a live sporting event ever. Didn't know much about soccer. Came to the match. It wasn't one of the better matches, but it was still fun. And he left and he told me, "I'm hooked. This is amazing," and started getting into soccer. And he's now keeping up with soccer, which is incredible. So I'm just saying that there are opportunities, and this is not for the supporters groups. Actually, this is more for the casual fans out there. There are opportunities to bring friends and family to the matches. There are available tickets to nearly every match. And at this point, with the team that we have, the atmosphere and the matches are so exciting and fun that they're going to get hooked. I mean, it's just a guarantee, unless they hate sports. If they hate sports, don't bring them at all. But if they're kind of into sports or they like this type of environment, they're going to love a Dynamo match. It's just a guarantee. It's a great environment. And so, do your part in the effort. Buy an extra ticket, find an extra ticket. There are people that can't go, and they're more than willing to give up their ticket to various matches. And guess what? That's an extra ticket you can use to bring somebody else with you. Bringing somebody else with you can grow the fan base. The more we grow this fan base, the more that we can support the team, the more cool stuff we can do. Ultimately, in the end, the more we can show this team that the effort they've put in the pitch and in the front office, which they've put an effort in there, is worth their time and money, because we will support the club. And we will find ways to continue to support the club and grow the fan base. With that said, we're going to go ahead and go to break. Again, Santos, thank you so much for calling in. We appreciate it. Thank you for hanging in there for the full hour. That was incredible. We're going to reopen the phone lines for those of you that want to call in. Before we go to break, we'll give that number out. But Santos, again, thank you very much, man. Have a good night. We hope you continue to listen to the rest of the show, because we've got a good another hour-long segment coming up, or 45-minute-long segment coming up on RGV stuff. But again, thank you very much, man. We appreciate it.
Oh, by the way,
thank you so much for giving me the invite.
Yeah, not a problem, man.
Anytime, Santos. Go ahead.
Take care. Have a good night. So Darby says that if anybody needs a ticket for tomorrow's match, be sure to contact her.
There you go, right there. See, and that to me is one of the coolest things about this fan base, and I'm sure other fan bases do the same thing. But there are ways that you can find people. There are always people that want to go to this type of thing, and there are ways that you can find people that have available tickets. It doesn't have to just be about money necessarily. There are people that are willing to give their tickets away for free for an opportunity to make sure that seat is filled. And so, thank you, Darby. That's amazing. That's awesome. You're awesome. So hopefully someone will reach out to Darby and claim that ticket. But man, that was a good hour. Oh, that was a great hour.
I think a lot was discussed.
I got something hard off my chest too.
Yes,
that's been pent up there for a while.
And I think not only did we get the fan side of you from the outside,
having Santos,
not
on
only
was
him and
Darby as well.
Darby on the chat, answered a couple of questions that Cisco had and anybody else had about how this worked.
And that's awesome.
And you got nominated for
apparently, apparently.
Make it viral, guys.
Oh God. All right. So with that being said, I don't already have enough on my plate week over week. Thanks, Edson and Darby. So with that said, we're going to go ahead and go to break. This is going to be a fairly long break because I need a break. So we're going to break for about 10 minutes, which I know is long. Just hang with us. When we come back, we're going to talk RGV. There were some things that happened this week that we need to discuss. And then we're going to discuss what is going on with RGV. And, we're going to open the phone lines because there are people that have opinions on RGV as well. And this can also be for any RGV fans that are out there. From the Valley, you are free to call in as well. That number is
956-622-5977. Once again, 956-622-5977.
All right, we're going to break.
Your times are rough, this time I see it too. All this bullshit drama, I can see right through. Everybody wants something they can't have, so they gon' put it on you. Wherever you go, yeah, you can take me there. Over the ocean, I can see us there. Let's run away and be forever young. We'll catch the sun where there's no need to run. Wherever you go, yeah, you can take me there. 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 I see you, and you see me too. We may be broke, but we see the truth. All this bullshit drama, I can see right through. Everybody wants something they can't have, so they gon' put it on you. Wherever you go, yeah, you can take me there. Over the ocean, I can see us there. Let's run away and be forever young. We'll catch the sun where there's no need to run. Wherever you go, yeah, you can take me there. Yeah, you can take me there. Yeah, you can take me there. Yeah, you can take me there.
That one?
Yeah, there we go.
Oh, okay.
All right. All right. So welcome back to the third hour of Generation
Oh,
Orange.
because I couldn't hear him before.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. So tonight we're going to talk about what's going on with RGVFC. And we're going to have the help of one of my co-hosts, Ray Silva. What's going on, Ray?
Good evening, gentlemen. How are you guys?
Doing good. Doing good. How are you?
Good, good. So, Sean, the last time we talked, you had mentioned Tunisia and World Cup. Ha ha ha.
Huh? I'm confused.
Yeah. You having trouble hearing me? Let me adjust my mic. Can you hear me better now?
Yeah. Go ahead. Repeat what you just said.
Yeah, you had the last time we had talked. You had mentioned Tunisia drawing with England in the World Cup, and we all had our laughs and banter about this. So now that's long gone. Let's talk Toros now.
When we're doing the preliminary World Cup finalists.
Oh well, yeah.
No,
let's wait. I get to defend myself here. Ray, who won our prediction competition? You could say it. Who won our prediction competition? I just want this to be clear.
You did.
So
you
I
did,
can.
But at least I didn't finish last.
I can. Yeah, well, that's fair. I can swing and I can miss on 9 out of 10, but I'm gonna hit it out of the park on the 10th one. When you can do that, come talk to me.
Oh.
Damn.
All right. Okay, let's get back. All right, so let me change the camera. All right.
Please get it off me. They don't want no more.
No, they'll still see your ugly mug.
I can only do that for so long. That hurts my head.
I can imagine. So anyways, so it's been an interesting week for RGVFC fans, for RGVFC, the organization in and of its well. It was.
Let's just say the last 2 weeks has been very, very interesting.
Yeah, I mean, so let's get started with from the basics, from the beginning. So last week there was a leak, or I guess you can call it a leak, by Alex Del Barrio, where he mentioned that Bert Garcia was going to step down the next day from the RGVFC and RGV Vipers presidency. It was news that impacted a lot of people because of how sudden it was, how unannounced it was. We talked about it many times during Down in the Valley that Bert Garcia really wasn't doing such a great job with the Toros. He was doing a great job with the Vipers.
Yeah.
But not with the Toros.
It's a different business.
Exactly. Then all of a sudden we see this bit of news that he's resigning from both
positions.
Both positions. So it caught everybody off guard.
Yeah.
Then we heard of a couple of people that worked for the RGVFC front office also resign, as well as some other members that were dear to us, like Mark, who also left the organization.
Yes.
So my question is, what happened? Why all of a sudden this sudden change, this shakeup in the RGVFC organization?
Yeah. What was the trigger?
Well, there's a lot of factors that may have gone into this. I have been talking to a lot of sources, and let's just say that this might be the start of change of the wind here. Now, what I mean by change of the wind is that maybe they may want to get people with experience of, let's say, of basketball, hire one person for that, and hire another one who knows a little bit something more about the soccer aspects. Now, will it happen? We don't know yet. All we know is that there is no interim named. I have been seeing multiple people there at Toros, at HB Park, pretty much doing like shadowing work, like promoting the team, doing the sales and whatnot of the team. Because I go around after like post game to walk down the concourse to cut across the field to get to the press room to get game reactions, and I have seen multiple people in place, but it just never thought to me that there was going to be this much of change this fast.
Yeah, and I mean, there's rumors and going around that this is coming from high up. This is coming from ownership, and we've talked about it before about how much influence the owner Alonso Cantu has on this organization. This movement or this shakeup has reawakened thoughts from RGVFC fans and from people close to Alonso Cantu that he's sincerely thinking of going independent with RGVFC Toros. Wow, last time we talked about it, I was all in for it. From then till now,
You've talked to me.
I go, hold on right there. We are in no position to go independent. We are not financially stable. We do not have the capital. We do not have the resources. We do not have the scouts. We do not have the coaching
I think you
staff.
could just stop at resources there, Edson. I mean, that's what it means with capital. I mean, there's just not enough resources to be fully independent. There's just not enough resources.
Exactly.
Period, to be independent. There just really isn't.
Yeah. Sean, you brought it up to me yesterday.
Mm-hmm.
You found out that the Houston Dynamo pays 100% of the salaries to RGVFC players and coaching staff.
Mm-hmm.
RGV right now has only one ownership, one investor, and that's Alonso Cantu.
Mm-hmm.
To run a successful soccer team, to not only run the team, but also HB Park, but also Bird Ogden Arena, RGV Vipers. You cannot rely on just one person. You need a minimum of 3 or 4 fat investors to come and help you out.
Absolutely.
Remember when we talked about that article about Division II ownerships? It's very, very difficult to be able to convince investors, to convince entrepreneurs, to convince millionaires to invest in lower division soccer, because 9 times out of 10, and I'm being generous,
Yeah.
it is going to end in the person and the investor losing the money they invested and more.
To be fair, to back that up, there are very few sports organizations and sports investors that actually get their money back in full. Most end up with less than they invested originally, outside of the big ones like NFL and NBA and MLB.
Mm-hmm.
So
until that happens, Alonso Cantu, if you're listening, I'm directing myself to you. Hold your horses. Keep the Toros on the stable. Swallow your pride until you can get those investors to back you up. Remove any thoughts of going independent. Because while at the beginning I was all in for it because the results weren't doing, at the end, it's one of those things where it's a bittersweet experience, but it's a necessity. Because the Dynamo have the resources, have everything to gain, and almost nothing to lose. If you decide to go independent, The Dynamo organization is not going to cry about it. They could easily just create another hybrid or choose another USL team to partner with, or worse, choose San Antonio FC to form the partnership with. That would be salt and lime to the wound for RGVFC fans. You understand me? Good. Let's hope so. Ray?
Well, it may not be a far-fetched idea that Dynamo could eventually partner up with San Antonio. We don't know the length of the partnership between the Dynamo and the Toros. Nobody knows those deals. So right now, I think we are just in it to keep the Dynamo-Toro relationship up.
Harry, you've already grabbed a couple of ex-Dynamo players.
A couple.
Might as well just make it official.
A couple.
But anyways, going back with RGV discussion, I think this shakeup, and before I go ahead and give me your thoughts. What does this shakeup mean? Does this mean that we'll finally see the necessary changes in the front office for the better? Or you think this is going to be one of those cases where be careful what you wish for because it may come true?
Well, Edson, I'm going to be a little bit optimistic here. Right now, the team is at a point where, okay, they made their major change. It may look very ugly at the beginning, but there's always light at the end of the tunnel with this. And I think they've made a major, major, major gamble that can go either two ways. It can go all out ugly, or it can look outright beautiful. And hopefully tomorrow's Down in the Valley show will bring a little bit more insight as to how everything went down.
Hopefully. So just to point out, guys, on Thursday's episode, like I mentioned at the beginning of the episode, Greg Luca from The Monitor is going to be on. He's going to have a lot more details about this shakeup in the RGVFC organization, what this means for the Toros, how is the Dynamo affected by this shakeup, how is the relationship going in, what has he heard from people that we may not have access to getting information. So be sure to tune in on Thursday at 7 p.m. for that interview with Greg Luca. I'm sure you will not be disappointed, RGBFC fans as well as Dynamo fans, to find out what's continuously going and what's really going on inside HEB Parkland.
Son?
So something just came into my head that I just realized and just remembered from the other day. James Clarkson.
Should we duck the cover?
No. James Clarkson, who ran the Dynamo Academy up until Thursday last week.
Yes.
He has been supplanted by someone else who came in from San Jose to take over the Dynamo Academy director position. James Clarkson has been coaching and running the BV Cavalry, this season, and has done a remarkable job. He knows those players. So if the Dynamo have caught wind, perhaps, let's just take this a step further. If the Dynamo perhaps have caught wind that RGV are considering independence, perhaps James Clarkson's move, and he's working still in the front office, his move might actually signal that the Dynamo are quite okay with that and already have a plan in place should that take place. That could mean that James Clarkson could actually build out a Houston 3 or Houston 2. that would compete in Division 3, just like a lot of the other MLS clubs that have started second division teams. The timing may actually be really good for RGV to do this for the Dynamo. It's not a good idea from the RGV side, but that's up to RGV. But from the Dynamo perspective, this may be the perfect timing because it allows them to build that extra, that extra club in a location that they want to build it. Maybe
a lot closer.
It could be closer. I mean,
because one of the biggest complaints by Dynamo pundits, including Glenn Davis, is the location of their affiliate. Almost 6 hours away.
Yeah.
And so there's that. Not only is it going to be harder for the transfer of players, the travel of players up and down, but also the fact that obviously you're talking about a completely different culture over there.
Yeah.
As well as the fact that because they're so far away, most Dynamo fans are really not going to care what's going on with RGV.
Yeah. I mean, I care because I have a link with you and Ray and Jacob and Cesar. I care because it's our young players and I want to see how they're playing. But it would not hurt my feelings to see RGV go away because of those reasons. Because, at the end of the day, it for the Dynamo, it has to be what's best for the Dynamo. From the RGV perspective, it needs to be what's best for RGV. Independence is never going to be the best thing for RGV. They might be able to make it work, but they're not going to reach that pinnacle that they're expecting to reach. You're losing your entire technical staff if the Dynamo leave. Has Alonso Cantu showed anybody in Rio Grande Valley that he has the soccer sense to hire the right soccer people?
Let me put it to you this way from what one of the people that told one of my sources. Let's just say that Alonso Cantu did not know what FC stood for until last week.
So the way I look at it is this. If he's going to make the decision to go independent, it has nothing to do with his pride. I really don't think it's that. I think it's just that...
I meant that more. Sorry, I meant that more towards the RGVFC fans.
Gotcha.
The fellow RGVFC fans.
So I think Alonso just feels like if he's not getting out of it what he expected to get out of it, he's going to do whatever he can to try to figure out how to get something.
And that's exactly what's happening. It's one of the original things that I would say is the fact that Alonso Cantu put in...
Yes, Blues, to answer your question, yes, they are. Go ahead, continue.
So the thing is like Alonso Cantu put in all this money for the stadium, for the state-of-the-art stadium for Division 2. And we were having problems that we were not feeling a competitive team because the Dynamo poaching, this and that.
Yeah.
People started not going to the stadium for other reasons. So they're not getting. He's not getting his money's worth from the stadium, and so he feels the easiest culprit is it's because the Dynamo they're the ones running the team, which is part of the problem.
Absolutely.
But as we've already discussed in the previous weeks, that aspect of the team is showing improvements.
Yep. Absolutely.
And there's potential for a lot more improvements coming in the near future. Just take a look at BV Cavalry. Take a look how well Laredo Heat has been doing as well.
Yeah.
In the MPSL.
Yeah.
But in the aspect that they have absolutely 100% control, which is marketing, which is getting people, the ones that go to these Liga MX friendlies, go up to them and tell them, come and watch the Toros. Not make it about the stadium, but make it about the team. They're not doing it.
Yeah.
So if Alonso Cantu, and I think this is what might be part of the shakeup, if Alonso Cantu is seeing this, hey, you know what? They're not pulling their weight. This needs to change.
Yeah.
Now I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt and saying that this shakeup is to try to fix this aspect first.
Absolutely.
Before even considering to implement some sort of independence.
So I said this before, and I've said it on Down in the Valley. I've said it to you personally. You know, the RGV experiment, if you will.
I'm sorry, I'm very expressive like that.
Yeah, I mean, it's okay. If the RGV experiment needed to take longer than a single year, it needed to take 5, 6, 7 seasons. The Dynamo understood that. I'm not sure Alonso Cantu understood that. I'm not sure he was made, you know, given that information that was the expectation, that this would not be an overnight successful project. It was going to take time because the Dynamo were going to have to backfill the talent depth before they could really build RGV up. Mm-hmm. You know, we've seen. We've seen the benefit begin to play out. If you look at, again, we were talking earlier about Wenger. Andrew Wenger was sent down, played a match for 45 minutes. You said he played a half?
Yes, he played
a half.
And Eric Bird
was
played 90.
Probably the best player on the field. You don't get that if you don't have that MLS connection. You don't have, if you're RGV and you don't have that connection to the Dynamo, you don't have Bryce Marion. You don't have Connor Donovan.
You don't have a roster,
You don't
period.
have Kyle Adams. You don't have Kai Green. You don't
have Nico Cordy.
You don't have Nico Cordy.
No Tyler Derrick.
No Quintanilla. You don't have Pablo Aguilar. I could go on. The point is, what we're trying to get at, and this is important for RGV fans to remember before they go clamoring for independence. All of these players that you currently have on your roster, every one of these players were picked by the Dynamo for RGV. The other important thing to remember, all of these players were scouted by the Dynamo. The Dynamo do all of the scouting for RGV. That means if you divest yourself from the Dynamo, you now have to go scout your own players. For the next 2 to 3 years after independence is done, you're going to be seeing primarily just RGV players. You're not going to see players beyond RGV. Alonso Cantu is not bringing in Didier Drogba. He is not bringing in a Sean Wright Phillips. He's bringing in what he can bring in, and it's not going to be much. And it's nothing against Alonso Cantu. It's just the reality of the situation. Now, it is very possible that Alonso Cantu understands these things, but it's also possible he does not. My concern is if he does not, where the next step is for RGV. The only step for RGV, if he does not, is independence, and it's not a good outlook long term. So, before going to clamor for, independence is the best thing in the world, just remember the grass is not always greener on the other side.
Exactly.
You will be years behind San Antonio FC. You will not be competitive with San Antonio FC. Oh, and for those out there that want relegation promotion, you're not going to get promoted anytime soon. Just keep that in mind.
Ray?
Well, after hearing Sean here for a while, there's something that just came to my mind that Houston may be wanting to pull something that Frisco FC pulled, which would be announce their intentions for a D3 team and located elsewhere where it might be a shorter distance and make it more of a realistic pipeline where you may have 3 affiliate teams instead of just having that one.
Well, I could actually see that, and I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. What you could see if that were to take place is you could see, say, a Houston club, because Houston, a Sugarland type club or something like that, here in the Houston area, that would be, would be their D3. Basically, they had a reserve team back when the reserve league was actually a thing. I could see that taking place, and I could actually see that happening. And I don't think that necessarily harms RGV in the long run. It would harm them initially because there would be players that would be taken from RGV for that purpose. But I think that relationship would still allow the Dynamo to bring in additional players for RGV that would be more focused on their, growing in the USL ranks it would allow the Dynamo to have the advantage for RGV is it allows the Dynamo to have two different teams to pull from instead of just one. So all of your players are not being plucked, but instead maybe just half of your players are being plucked when they're ready. You know, there's a few different there's a lot to think. I mean, that's really interesting, but that I could see that would make sense. That would give Alonso Cantu some more control than he has now necessarily. But at the same time, it would also keep the Dynamo relationship alive. It would not sour that relationship. It would also give the Dynamo a closer entity that they could pull from and pull into. You know, it's really hard to say because we don't know what these, you know, various entities are thinking. But I find it very interesting that James Clarkson is now with the Dynamo front office, but doesn't really have an official academy title anymore. You don't do that without having something planned or something in place to do with him. You know, it's just something's coming, and I don't know what it is.
Yeah, and one thing that, I mean, maybe it just may have flown over my head, but does anybody really know the full details of the Dynamo RGV relationship as far as like, hey, we're going to be using you guys for X amount of years to develop our players, and we'll renew at certain point.
Yeah, no, those details were never released publicly, and I don't even think any report. If anybody might know, it might be Greg Luca, though I would be shocked if he actually did. But at least as far as up here, I don't think there was ever a specific year number set publicly. That's not to say that there wasn't a agreement made on the number of years, and that could be something as simple as 5 years, which, you know, now we're in year 3. So that's not far off. They could be planning for that contingency. It could be as long as 10 years. And maybe they're just trying to figure out how to make it work better for both sides. It could be as simple as there was, you know, a 4-year or 3-year agreement, and they're reaching the end of it, and Alonso's decided he's done, and that's all she wrote. We won't know until things shake out completely, and we can speculate all day long and all night long, but until those things shake out, it's just speculation. We don't really know. But I just, you know, for the fan perspective, from the RGV fan perspective, it's really important to remember that independence, which sounds great and on paper is wonderful, there's a lot of things that have to be figured out before that could even become a reality. There's a lot of things that have to be taken into consideration before that decision could even be made. Perhaps that's what he wants to do. Perhaps it's not what he wants to do. Perhaps he just wants a successful team and he's content with the Dynamo relationship, but maybe he's not. At the end of the day, what's most important from an RGV perspective is that the club figures out what they're going to do and they do it. They just pick a direction and they go. At some point, you have to do that. You can't just live in limbo. And whatever that decision is made, the Dynamo and Dynamo fans need to respect it, and RGV fans need to respect it and be okay with it and embrace it, whatever it is. Because you support the club no matter what happens. You support the club first.
I mean, unfortunately, I cannot speak as a season ticket holder because I've been going to games on and off. You know, I mean, I like the environment. I enjoy the experience of the club. You know, I mean, now that I've recently teamed up with Edson, Caesar, Jacob, you know, I've been able to take a look at this team from a different point of view. And it's kind of mind-boggling how everything just shakes up. Edson?
Yeah. So just wanted to answer a couple of questions that came out in the chat. So Cisco asked, how is it good enough for the Rockets but not the Dynamo as far as the partnership? Greg Luca talked about it last time he was on. The difference between the Rockets-Vipers relationship and the Dynamo-Toros relationship is that the Vipers have some sort of leeway when it comes to choosing some players for their roster and acquiring those players, whereas the Dynamo give 0% control to the RGVFC organization to choose players for that roster. They can still hold on. Let me just quickly finish my thought.
What did he say? What did you say, Ray?
No, my question is, okay, Aldo Quintanilla was signed by a local Toros tryout. Now, my question is, when the Toros hold these tryouts, are there Dynamo representatives down there to view these tryouts?
Remember,
or how does that work?
Now, remember that every technical aspect of the Toros is controlled by the Dynamo,
including tryouts.
Exactly, which means technically the Dynamo is the one that signed Aldo Quintanilla.
Absolutely, they were the one who found
When people talk about signings, Chuy Quintanilla, that's actually that's a corrido singer, but that should be a perfect partnership name between Chuy Enriquez and Aldo Quintanilla. So Chuy Enriquez, when he was on down in the valley, he said, "I was contacted by my agent saying that the Houston Dynamo still wanted me."
Well,
he didn't say the Toros.
Yeah.
He said the Houston Dynamo still wanted me on their team.
Well, think about other players that have said the Dynamo have approached me to be signed, or that have rumored to have been signed by the Dynamo that turned out to be RGV signings. Carlos Small is a perfect example of that. But there have been other players, similar players, in the same exact thing.
Now, I do not doubt, for example, in the case of Brandon Morales, who is an RGVFC Academy.
Yeah.
He was shown to the Dynamo technical director. They made the decision up here and said, okay, we'll sign Brandon Morales as another homegrown player for the Toros.
Absolutely.
Which means that now Brandon Morales, even though he's an RGVFC Academy product, is now
he's part of the Dynamo system.
He's part of the Dynamo system now. Yeah. Which means that if Brandon Morales is ever sold, the Dynamo is the one that's going to get the money, technically.
Yep. So one of the things that Blues said, and this is really interesting and a point to be made, and this is good for Dynamo fans to know, RGV was promoted originally by their media and the club as a win now team. They were never projected as a stars to watch kind of team. And so, and we've talked about this before, the marketing around the team was centered around come watch a championship competitive team. That's not to say they can't be that, but when your marketing is centered around that, fans expect that year over year. When your marketing is centered around, like the Corpus Christi Hooks, for instance, is centered around these are the future players of the Astros. Valley fans are still going to come out if you market it that way, because you know what? It may not be right this minute that they're going to do that, but if that had been the direction from the start, if that had been the conversation from the start, RGV fans would have come out in droves for the opportunity to be involved with that.
And guess what? It would still it'd be a team that is representing the Rio Grande Valley.
Absolutely. 100% yes.
Yeah. Now I understand that.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, Sean.
You're learning. You're learning, young disciple of mine. You're learning.
Thank you. So there's something else here that okay, so yeah, I agree, Blues fan. They would not be able to afford the wages. Now, Harry says, what about filling with Liga MX type players? Who would that fill the stadium? Greg Luca touched upon that because last year RGV actually wanted to do that. They went up to the Dynamo. They told them, hey, we want to get this player. And he didn't say who. He just said, like Greg Luca just said, it's a player that people here in the Valley would immediately recognize.
Yeah.
So which needs to be assumed would be an ex-League MX player.
Most likely, yeah.
Dynamo said no, because they would not benefit. The Dynamo would not benefit in any way by signing this player. They would have no use for him to call him up.
Absolutely.
For the Dynamo.
Absolutely.
And so there would be no benefit in order to spend their money to buy him.
Yep, exactly.
Now, going back to what I said before, if Alonso Cantu is able to get these investors to back this team,
it's a completely different situation, yeah.
And they are interested in this player, a certain player, they go up to the Dynamo and say, hey, look, we're interested in acquiring this player for the Toros to bring in experience, and we will foot the bill.
That's a different situation entirely.
Exactly. Yep. And guess what? The Dynamo would look at it, hey, well, maybe, you know what? We'll give them some leeway to choose some. That's totally different. Yeah, to choose some of their players, whatever they need in order to fill that stadium, we'll let them go.
Yeah.
But until that happens, until they stop relying on Dynamo money to get these players, It's not going to happen.
So Jacob actually is in the chat, which I thought was pretty awesome. Jacob says by 2021, we will probably see RGVFC be financially stable and most likely ready to leave Houston Dynamo. That's what I see, plus with RGVFC able to fill the stadium because of better management. And a few people responded that 2021 seems insanely optimistic, and I think I agree with that. Financially stable is a very strong term for a team that has a lot of growth to do if you're going to go independent. And even if you're not, it still has a lot of growth to do. There's a lot of front office things that need to be fixed, for sure. Jacob also, he rebuts himself. He says, not financially stable. We need more investors. And Ian, goes on from there. But it's important to keep these things in mind because they shape the future of RGV. They shape the perception of RGV, both for Dynamo fans and RGV fans. And this whole discussion is important because as Dynamo fans, we need to remember that it's not just us that has to deal with all these things. That there's the RGV organization, the RGV fans are dealing with a lot of the same things that we deal with, just in a different way. Whether it's front office frustrations, whether it's, the direction of the team doesn't gel with what we expected, whether it's technical things are not quite going like we thought and it takes time to fix, whatever it may be, those things, it's just important as Dynamo fans to remember that RGV fans are going through a lot of the same thing. And for now, at least, we're part of the same family. We are part of the same support. We are part of the same system. And it's up to Dynamo fans just as much as it's up to RGV fans. Just like we were talking about when it came to the supporters group stuff. It's up to us to bridge that gap with RGV fans. And, if we bridge that gap with RGV fans and we start welcoming them into our system, so to speak, I guarantee you over the long haul, there's going to be a different decision made other than independence. Because now there's a feeling of that family. There's a commitment and a connection to the Dynamo. Right now, the biggest problem with RGV is there's no real connection to the Dynamo in terms of from the fan perspective. There's nothing that keeps them connected to the Dynamo.
Where's so many RGV fans that are fans of the Sounders, that are fans of FC Dallas.
Oh yeah.
And the only reason they go for they support the Toros is because it's local.
Yep.
They don't care about the Dynamo.
Yep.
And it's up to Dynamo fans to make them feel welcome into the system.
And it's also up to the RGV front office as well and the Dynamo front office to coordinate some cross-promotion there. I think it's important. And I don't know how much has been coordinated. I wish I had, sources literally in the front office for me. But I don't know how much has been worked on in terms of trying to build that relationship. I don't know if there was ever a desire for that relationship to be built. Maybe this was just a short-term project for the Dynamo. Maybe it was just a stopgap for the Dynamo. That's a possibility. I don't know. I can't say. We weren't privy to those discussions being had between Alonso Cantu and the Dynamo organization. But at the end of the day, it's what we have right now. It's what we're going to have, at least for the foreseeable future. So it's what we have to embrace. It's what we have to, to welcome in. It's funny. I talk about welcoming people in and all that. You, an RGV fan, coming up to Houston, literally welcomed you in, right? And what does that spur? What does that spur? We've got this show. You've got Down in the Valley that came out of that. The gaming channel. Think of the good things that have come out of this relationship that we've built over just simply being fans of two different teams, but of being part of the same system, of being part of the same family. We've created all of this together by bridging that gap. So if we can do that, I guarantee you guys, you can do it too. And it makes a world of difference. It makes a world of difference.
Interesting point, Harry. There is no financial stability even in current D2, in my opinion.
There definitely wouldn't be in D3.
Hell, even in San Antonio, we worry how long SSE, Spurt Sports and Entertainment, will foot the bill for San Antonio FC.
And that's a team that's doing very well.
Especially now with the fact that SA to MLS is dead.
Yeah.
And that was the complete 100% intention for SSC to acquire to create San Antonio FC.
Yep.
From the remnants of San Antonio Scorpions.
Yep. You're
So
100% spot on.
Real interesting outlook in this. Ray, any final thoughts before we let you go?
No, I've got no final thoughts at this time. I mean, it's just that all of this is very interesting. Now that you mention San Antonio, now that their MLS streams may have gone down the drain thanks to the city of Austin, it's going to be real interesting how they're going to be able to sustain their D2, if not go down to a D3 if the Spurs don't put that bill.
Yeah, that is an interesting little way of looking at it, and it would be interesting to see if Harry would say like what he's heard about that. But it'd be interesting to check out his podcast to see what's going on in their aspect of what's going on. Is it going to continue to be D2, or is SSC going to be like, well, you know what? No MLS.
We got to back out. Yeah.
Yeah. This isn't making money for us.
We're not going to grow any further. Yeah. So with that being said, we're going to go to one more quick little break, and then when we come back, we're going to kind of close up shop. It's been a long night already. Ray, thank you so much for calling in. Guys, remember.
Sean.
Yeah, what's
Sean,
up, Ray?
Edson, thank you for the platform, and I'll be tuning in on Wednesday to see, or on Thursday to see how that conversation with Greg Luca goes.
Of course, man.
Absolutely. Thank you, Ray, for calling, and we appreciate it, man. Always welcome to call in anytime. With that said, we're going to go. Yep.
No problem. Bye.
We're going to go ahead and go to break, but before we go to break, do remember that on Thursday, Down in the Valley is going to be talking this same stuff and more in depth with Greg Luca from The Monitor, and trust me, you don't want to miss that. It's going to be fun. I'm going to be on. I'm very much looking forward to this opportunity to talk to Greg Luca yet again. As I said last time when he was on and I got to talk to him, it's just great. There's just so much goodness that comes out of that. And so tune in Thursday at 7 p.m. Central to the Down in the Valley YouTube channel. If you haven't already liked and subscribed to the video, subscribe to this channel. Do so now. That way you can get alerts whenever Down in the Valley and Generational Orange go live. And with that said, we're going to go ahead and go to break, and then we'll come back in just a couple of minutes. It's going to be a fairly short break for us, and then we're going to close up shop for the night.
And don't forget to subscribe to Down in the Valley Gaming as well.
Oh, yeah, that too. Don't forget them. They're important.
times are rough, this time I see it too. All this bullshit drama, I can see right through. Everybody wants something they can't have, so they gon' put it on you. Wherever you go, yeah, you can take me there. Over the ocean, I can see us there. Let's run away and be forever young. We'll catch the sun while there's no need to run. Wherever you go, yeah, you can take me there. Yeah, you can take me there.
Can they hear us now? Could they not hear me?
Can you hear me now? Now? Yes.
Okay. Welcome back to Generation Orange, a Houston Dynamo RGV Tours podcast. This has been the 3-hour edition of Generation Orange.
And I'm tired.
And I'm very tired. Yeah, actually, I'm exhausted mentally. This has been a very good night. It's been very good, productive discussion, very open, honest discussion. I think this kind of stuff is needed. Did you just dab on air? Oh, God.
Because Blues fan said.
Oh, he told you to?
No, he's like, since they're muted, just going to dab real quick. They won't notice.
Oh, dab on them. It's this kind of discussion needs to be had. And we need to not, as fans, we need to not be afraid to dive into these types of discussion, even when it's uncomfortable. Mm-hmm. Because this is how we grow. This is how we... this is how we improve. This is how we help the organizations grow and improve. And a big part of this is, and I said it in my epic rant at this point, that it's time to put our big boy pants on. And I think that goes for us as fans as much as everybody else. It's time that we realize that this is now a grown-up organization, and that goes for RGV as well as the Dynamo. And the Dash as well. They're grown-up organizations, and while we may not agree with everything that they do, we have to remember that we don't have control over that, whether we want to or not. And it's okay to be frustrated, but it's not okay to stop supporting the club because you disagree with them. You can still support the club. It's okay. It's not going to kill you, I promise. And there are better times ahead for those that are in positions where their team is struggling mightily. There are better times ahead. Again, remember that there's a match tomorrow night at 7 p.m. Central, which is probably one of the reasons the Down in the Valley is postponed until Thursday. And then Down in the Valley again is on Thursday at 7 p.m. Central. Please tune in. It will be an awesome 2-hour-long show because, it needs to be.
We are one of the longer, if not the longest, episodic podcast in all of USL.
That's awesome. That's really awesome, actually. And it goes to show that your effort, that your effort and Jacob's effort and Ray's effort and Cesar's effort, that it's not, that there's recognition there to be had. That you guys are doing good work, so keep.
No,
up.
I meant that it's the one that the episodes last
longer.
longer.
Oh, last longer. Oh,
yeah.
Well, the same thing. You're doing something. You're talking long enough, right? That counts for something. With that said, remember to tune in for our show, Generation Orange, every Tuesday at 7 p.m. Central on the Down in the Valley YouTube channel. Also, remember to tune in to our gaming channel, Down in the Valley Gaming. No, what is it called?
Yes, Down in the
Valley Gaming, starring the Dynamo Bros. Whenever we air, playing whatever game we play, mostly Rocket League at this point. Which,
by the way, apparently I'm the Mauro Madotas of the Dynamo Bros.
You certainly are. You like to not get the ball on frame. With that said, again, if you are tuned in and listening and watching, please hit the like and the share and the subscribe buttons. We appreciate your support, as always. We want to continue to see this grow. We want to continue to see this thing blossom into something bigger. We know that it can. We know that it will. But it definitely requires your support and your help. Maybe some point we need to do like a telethon. I'm just kidding. No, there will never be a telethon. We'll figure out some better way to raise money if we ever need to. With that said, before we go, I do want to say that if anybody watching needs tickets for tomorrow's match, I have available tickets that popped up out of nowhere. A good quantity of them, actually, which is even more surprising. So, yes, if you are inclined to want to go to tomorrow's match and you don't have a ticket, if you know someone that wants to go to tomorrow's match and they don't have a ticket, if you know someone that knows someone that wants to go tomorrow night but doesn't have a ticket, hit me up on Twitter. You can hit us up at it's at Gen Orange Radio, or you can hit me up at Sean Ringrose, and I will reply, and we will figure out how to get you those tickets.
Point down.
Down there somewhere.
Yeah, his Twitter handle's there.
Oh, nice. Very nice. And with that, I think we bid this adieu. I think we close this off. And you know what? It's been a great show. Again, thank you for tuning in. We really do appreciate it. You guys have a great night, and we will talk to you guys in 1 week.
Take care.
Boom. Goes the dynamite.